Good evening, and welcome to the Canton Planning Commission at the Canton's beautiful Village Theater on the 15th of June. As always, we like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's no different here. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So in the midst of pandemics, protests, and politics, we've gone through a very volatile time, skipped a whole bunch of meetings, and here we are. Thank you for joining us. I understand people are going to be joining us a little at a time due to the spacing requirements, and please forgive me. I do have my mask today, but I figure that since we are far enough apart that we can talk without it. That doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't have to wear their mask. Who is here today? Commissioner Zuber, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. I'm going to start at this side. Commissioner Okon?
Here.
Commissioner Acharya?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham-Hudak?
Good evening.
Commissioner Zuber here. Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Chairman Green here?
I am here.
You are here. Commissioner Perkins? Here. Commissioner Eggenberger?
Here.
And Commissioner Bennett is not here.
Okay, and of course we have our community planning staff, Jeff Goulet and Patrick Sloan. Welcome, and welcome again to you all. We last met in March 2nd, before things hit the fan, and so we have minutes for that. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All right, got a motion to approve the March 2nd minutes by Commissioner Okon and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving right along. We have an agenda tonight of, wow, a lot of items. We've got 8 items tonight. Are there any late additions from staff?
No additions, but items 5, 6, and 7 are retroactive approvals. Those are existing seasonal sales. So you can kind of
Could you speak closer to the mic, because I'm, yeah.
Yeah, 5, 6, and 7 are retroactive approvals. So you can bundle those together. Number 8 is one that you've seen before, but they've changed location in the parking lot a little bit, so you may want to talk to him. So otherwise, you can kind of.
I'm sorry, what about number 8?
Number 8, TNT, is in generally the same location, but a different spot in the parking lot.
okay.
So, but all the other ones were exactly the same as they were last year.
So you're suggesting that the others, we just bundle them?
Yeah, they probably will not be here
Okay.
tonight. Yeah, so
Okay.
they've already been authorized to open.
All right. All right, so
You know,
be it.
Jeff, you have to speak louder because we can't read your lips right now.
Okay.
Communication is everything.
I'm usually pretty loud.
All right, so with that said, do I hear a motion to accept tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All right, got a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving right along. Our first 4 items tonight are public hearings, so just want to speak on that for a minute. Public hearings are just that, it's where we hear the public. So as we introduce these projects, you are welcome to engage with us on the project. If you have any questions or concerns, you have 90 seconds or whatever, a minute and a half. Unless you're representing a group, then you get, about twice that much. So, but we don't put a stopwatch on you. We do want to hear any questions or concerns that you have. We ask that you fill out one of those forms. Are the forms at the podium?
No forms. We're
There's no forms?
limiting paper, so we'll.
Okay, we're limiting
Just
paper, but
name
at
and
least
address.
give your name and address, for the record as you speak through the microphone. We are asking that the public speak there, and project sponsors speak there, thereby following some distance procedures. So with that said, our first agenda item tonight is the Fillmore Place final PDD and site plan, where we're considering final PDD and site plan approval for property which is located north of Michigan Avenue and west of Beck Road. Patrick, could you tell us more about that project?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And along the way, if anyone has any trouble hearing me or understanding, just feel free to let me know and I'll make sure to back up or slow down or whatever I need to do.
Okay, could you repeat that, please?
I like that. I've probably attended hundreds of planning commission meetings over my career, and this is the first time I've ever worn a mask at one, so
Well, I think
this is new for me too.
It's a difficult situation because not only are masks being worn, but the sound, the acoustics in here are totally different than what we're used to. So what you might want to do, if you're wearing a mask, you might want to just be closer to the mic, just because that might help everybody. Anyway, just a suggestion. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The proposal is for the final approval of the Fillmore Place Plan Development District, as well as an approval for the site plan for Fillmore Place. The preliminary approval of this plan development was recommended by the Planning Commission on December 9th of 2019, and it was granted by the Township Board of Trustees on January 14th of 2020. So now we're at the stage of the final PDD, and the applicants have decided to include the site plan with the final PDD concurrently. The final PDD and site plan that are proposed are mostly consistent with the approved preliminary PDD. The applicant for Fillmore Place proposes to locate 504 apartment units on approximately 97.3 acres located on the west side of Beck Road between Michigan Avenue and Geddes Road. The project density of 5.18 residential units per acre is less than the maximum density of 8 units per acre recommended by the comprehensive plan and allowed under the R6 zoning. There are 2 entrances proposed along Beck Road, and there's also a secondary access proposed in the southwest part of the site for a future connection to Woodbridge Estates to the west. While the secondary access to Woodbridge Estates is conceptual at this time, and its location will be finalized prior to site plan review, the applicant proposes a reciprocal access easement within the application. Each plan development project is required to demonstrate a definite benefit to the community, and the project sponsor proposes the following benefits. First, maintaining 33% of the site as open space, which is almost 33 acres, and exceeding the 25% minimum open space requirement. This open space will include a large woodland area in the north part of the site. The second benefit is providing trails and active recreation throughout the open spaces. The third is reforesting 2 acres of the open space in the southeast part of the site adjacent to Beck Road. Other benefits include connecting the proposed sidewalk along Beck Road to the current sidewalk termination south of the Signs Drain, and making traffic signal improvements noted in the traffic impact assessment. Other site amenities include a clubhouse, pool, playground, dog park, community garden, and gazebos. Our report covers a number of issues, many of which are the same as preliminary plan development, so we won't recount those. There are just a couple items that we will touch on. The first is the architecture. The architectural plans submitted show the minimum 50% brick and masonry required by the zoning ordinance, and all buildings are at least 75% brick and masonry. The architectural plans also show the horizontal offsets of at least 4 feet on the rear. The rear elevations of the one-story buildings that face Beck Road have additional reverse gables to break up the long roof lines and to improve the appearance along Beck Road. The rear elevations along the other one-story buildings that don't abut Beck Road have a reverse gable on each end of the building and not the ones in the middle. So we will defer to the Planning Commission regarding the architectural design proposed. The other item that we wanted to touch on was the landscaping. The landscape plan is designed in accordance with the landscaping and tree replacement standards of the zoning ordinance. At this time, there are some very minor revisions required, though most of those revisions are to correct minor discrepancies between the plant material list and the plan labels. So our recommendation there is for those minor revisions to be corrected prior to the Township Board approval of the final PDD. So with that, our recommendation is approval of the final plan development district, subject to the applicant executing and recording the PD agreement and the reciprocal access easement agreement, and also approval of the site plan subject to the applicant revising the landscape plans in accordance with the recommendations in our report. I'll
Thank-
conclude there, and with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Is the project sponsor here? Yes, sir. Would you like to come up and add anything, say anything about the project? Come on up to the mic.
I don't need to add anything. If you had any questions.
Could you
though, I
speak into the mic, please? I don't know.
At this time, I don't need to add anything.
Okay.
But if you had any questions, I could answer them.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, I want to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion to open the public hearing on this project by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, from the audience, are there any comments or concerns on this project? Okay,
Move to close the public hearing?
We did get a letter, I don't know.
okay, we want to make, for the record,
That's for the Meadows.
That one is for Meadows of Cherry Hill, the letter from, I believe it's 433 Ridge from Mr. Rose.
Oh, it's for the, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
that'll be one of the next ones.
My mistake.
okay.
Okay, never mind. Move to close the public hearing.
Support?
All right, got a motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, let me start with Commissioner Okon and see if he's got any causes for concern.
I am all set. Thank you so much.
And Commissioner Acharya,
All set too.
Commissioner Graham Hudak.
Thank you. I just have one question. So this is going to be a private area to walk around. Is that true, or are the trails open to the public?
It will be private and available to the residents of the development.
So I know we have a lot of bicycle riders here, and if they want to drive through the trails, then they wouldn't be able to do it? Is it going to be fenced off, or how would that be handled?
There are no fences proposed to prohibit any kind of access, and ideally, when the southwest connection is made to the development to the west, that there would be connecting sidewalks between the developments. So although they would be private, I think they would be commonly used by nearby pedestrians.
Okay, so since we're trying to, one of our goals is connected sidewalks, the people on the trails would have to go around this development on the sidewalk, then you're saying?
Well, I don't know, Kevin, you're not going to police people walking through your pathways, are you?
No, we are not going to police people. I mean, if they're coming down the sidewalk on Peck Road and they come into our project to ride through or cut through to the next subdivision, I mean, that's fine.
I mean, it's not any different than here in Cherry Hill Village where it's all a private condo, but you have paths running through the development. I mean, basically they're open and, it's, nobody's putting up gates that you can't say that you can't walk on them. So it's, there for visibility and people get from one development to the other via the sidewalks and pathways.
Okay, that's good, because then
Okay.
it meets our goals of, trying to find a park and trail within 10 minutes of people. So that would be great. Thank you.
Commissioner Zuber? Anything?
No, no,
Commissioner Engel?
All set?
Commissioner Perkins?
I'm all set.
I am also all set, thank you.
All right, as am I. This has been quite some time coming, and we've seen this. How many times has this come before us?
Preliminary PDD, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'll be a good project. The use of the facilities by the public would probably be the same as across Beck and Getty's, the one that's building there now. Remember, they're building a park, and we asked if that was, it's not going to be a public park in the sense that Canton runs it, but it will be basically open to the public that way. So I think we have to regard it that way. Hopefully there's no problems with that. Okay, do I hear a motion at all?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I move to recommend final approval of the Fillmore Place Planned Development District on tax parcel number 125990002-709, as provided in the Plan Development Agreement and Plan documents, subject to the applicant executing and recording of the PDD agreement and reciprocal access easement agreement. Further, I move to approve the site plan for Fillmore Place, which includes 504 apartments on approximately 97.3 acres as proposed, subject to the PDD approval by the Township Board and the conditions of PDD approval, including applicant revising the landscape plans in accordance with the recommendations above prior to final PDD approval.
Support.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Zuber. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Okon?
Yes.
Commissioner Ataria?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
Yes?
Commissioner Zuber, yes. Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins? Yes. Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
And Chairman Green.
Yes. So the motion carries, and as a recommending body, we send this to the trustees. He would meet with the trustees when?
Probably the July 14th meeting.
July, okay. So good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our second agenda item of the night is the Wellington on the Willow PDD amendment, where we're considering an amendment for property which is located south of Ford Road and west of I-275. Jeff, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think what we can do is, since these are kind of scheduled apart, this one was scheduled for 7:30, we can go ahead and get started with the initial presentations. If somebody comes in later, always take their comments later if, depending on when the public hearing is opened and closed, so.
Well, how will we know, and how will they know to do that?
Well, by the time we get done with the presentations, it'll probably be 7:30, so.
It's not going to take that long, I
We'll
hope.
just play it by ear.
Some
So
super long
you can-
presentations.
You can ask before you take a motion if anybody else is here to speak to it, so.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right, Jeff, go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. This is a project that you've seen before. This is an amendment to the final plan development for Wellington on the Willow. You've seen this in the past via conditional rezoning and a preliminary plan development. David Stolman, representing Lots Road SOBI LLC, is representing this. They are in the process, or they have a purchase agreement with the owners of the property to purchase it, and they wish to make some changes to the layout and building types and architecture that was originally approved as part of the plan development last year. So the statement of conditions for the conditional rezoning included a concept plan for a maximum of 282 attached residential units on the 40 acres of land there on Lots Road south of Ford Road, less than the maximum density permitted by the comprehensive plan and that allowed in the R6 district. So the offer of conditions at the time required approval of a plan development district and restricts the future development by prohibiting many uses that could otherwise be considered in the R6 district. That was one of the benefits of the conditional rezoning. So the final PDD was approved by the Township Board on October 23rd, 2018. So after that time, basically the property owner then basically marketed the property to developers and builders in the area. And we've been kind of discussing what kind of revisions might be acceptable before Mr. Stolman brought this application into us. So the proposed plan development amendment actually reduces the total number of units by 14 from 282 to 268, further reducing the density. It also eliminates, if you remember on Lots Road, there were 4-story buildings, kind of mixed-use buildings on Lots Road. Those have resulted in being basically too expensive to build due to the type of construction necessary to support a 4-story building. So essentially, they've eliminated the 4-story buildings, and the project is also now proposed as condominiums instead of apartments. So that's one benefit of this amendment, is going to an ownership-type product instead of a rental product. So the proposed PDD, as I said, includes 268 units with 2 distinct attached residential building types. There's a townhouse product, which you saw a townhouse product in the last one, and stacked flats. And the stacked flat building is a new building that is very different than I think what you've seen before. So over 68% of the site will be preserved in open space, and most of the wooded area in the southern portion of the site will be placed into a conservation easement. A clubhouse facility with a pool and walking trails are also amenities within the community, and all of the natural wooded areas will be preserved into that easement with the state of Michigan. Due to the nature of the project, they'll be utilizing private roads and have chosen not to connect or extend the public road serving the single-family development of Westland. So this is not a change from the original approval. I didn't try to explain in writing what the architectural elements were. So, but essentially what they're doing is they're decreasing the amount of modifications they needed because of the height and distance of the buildings to one another. So this building type actually increases the spacing between buildings, it reduces the height, and so the overall schedule of modifications that you see on the PDD agreement, many of those are reduced. The one change that they are making is due to the contemporary nature of the architecture, they're asking for a building material modification, which is why I wanted them to bring the building materials with you, so you could see the actual colors and materials for yourself. So I want to take a break and give you a chance to look at those building materials so you can match those up with the architectural renderings that are up on the screen. So the product that's up on the screen now that Patrick is the townhouse product. You can see that it reduces the brick, but it adds a lot of materials that we don't normally see in Canton buildings, including there's all types of newer type of products that look like wood that aren't wood, so it adds some warmth to the elevation. It also includes some brick elements, some vertical siding elements, and just a little bit more contemporary feel than the normal kind of red brick colonial style condos that we normally see. And that's something I think that the Planning Commission liked with the four-story buildings in the last product, is they were a little bit more contemporary and had that kind of younger vibe, and that's what was intended to do here with this style of architecture. And Hobbs and Black is here tonight to explain how they came up with the concept. The other product are the stacked flats, and they all have attached garages. This is the garage side of the townhouses. We go to the other product, Patrick. So there's the side kind of perspective view showing how the siding gets wrapped and how the wood type product gets integrated into the sides of the building and wraps around. The other building, just keep going. So that's, some of these are all different versions of the same building depending on where they sit. So this is the stacked flat. So you can see that they kind of look like townhouses, but they're actually flats, and they all have garages. So some of them have units that sit over the garages on the first level, but they kind of have the same flavor. These are, if you look at the footprint of the building, these are a much larger footprint, given the type of structure it is. But they also incorporate, balconies and patios and those kinds of things, but utilize the same kind of materials in similar ways as the townhouse buildings. This is something that you probably have never ever seen in Canton, but we think this is a good location for this product, and it just gives a little bit different flavor than we normally see in more of our traditional developments. So with that, I'll turn it over to the project sponsor, Mr. Stolman, and his team to be able to explain the changes they've made, why the changes, what market they're trying to hit, those kinds of things. David?
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And while he's doing that, I would like to entertain a motion for opening the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
All right, a motion to open the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Jeff, I have one question. Could you go over the difference between a townhouse and a stacked flat?
Townhouses are up and down in the same unit. Stacked flats are unit here and unit here.
Okay, so
Okay.
the stacked flats are just one story.
Right, but
Per
there's...
resident.
But they're 2 stories, so there's different, so all, they're one floor, but they're stacked.
Okay.
So,
Over the garages.
right,
Right.
and over one another, yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
All right?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is David Stolman. I'm the president of Biltmore Development. And we're here tonight for your consideration of our amendment to the Wellington on the Willow final PDD. With me tonight is Wayne Chubb from Hobbs and Black, our lead architect, and Kristen Poza with Warner Cantrell, our civil engineer. To begin tonight's presentation, I'd like to provide you with some preliminary information about Biltmore. Biltmore is a 4th-generation family business. The company's over 106 years old, and for the last 60 years or so, we've been the largest and most prominent residential land developer in southeastern Michigan, developing some of the largest landmark land development projects in the area. Tonight, we're delighted to present to you a revised final PDD plan, which we believe is an improvement on the prior approved PDD plan. As you will recall, and as Jeff has sort of outlined, the final PDD for Wellington on the Willow was approved in the summer, fall of last year. Since its approval, Biltmore has worked hard with the township and township staff on the site plan and architectural drawings that you see before you tonight. As a quick overview, Biltmore has reconfigured the Wellington on the Willow PDD plan from a rental apartment project to a for-sale condominium project. This new PDD plan has fewer overall units, contains more open space, reduces buildings from 4 stories to a maximum of 3 stories, and creates no additional impacts into the wetlands or conservation areas. Additionally, as you can see from the images on the screen, as this project has been targeted for younger buyers, new families, and young professionals, we designed the for-sale units with an eye to a fresh, current contemporary architectural style, springboarding from the style of the 4-story buildings that were previously approved. Once I'm finished with my overall presentation, Wayne will provide an overview of the modern farmhouse style that we have incorporated into the project. Before we get to the architecture, I would like to discuss some of the proposed overall changes that we've made to the plan. I'm trying to think how to do this. I've got a laser pointer, so can I think I can just do, will that work?
It's a laser on top of a laser.
Yeah, will that? I don't think, no, won't work.
So,
Won't go that far. Okay, well, we tried. I'm just going to sort of try and point out as best as I can to you sort of what the changes are, so you can see, what we've done and what we haven't done. To start with, first off, the road pattern is virtually identical to the PDD that was approved. We tried to keep the roads virtually in the same locations. There's been slight adjustments based on the size of the buildings and that, but for the most part, I'd say 90 to 95% of the road pattern is identical. The trail systems and pathways also essentially remain unchanged. The largest change that you can see is obviously the difference in the buildings, and I'll touch on them briefly, and then Wayne can go into the architecture in detail. The stacked flats are a 3-story building. There's 16 units per building, and there's 32 attached garages. So each unit has its own 2-car attached garage. Oh, the volume went on. Each unit will have its own individual front door entrance and entrance from a garage into the unit. And these stacked flat units, as Jeff described, are essentially ranches on top of each other. So each unit will be a 1-floor unit. There's a possibility for the 2nd-floor units that we might be able to add bonus loft space into the attic. But essentially, they're flats on top of flats. The townhouse homes, and those, by the way, are the larger buildings that you see on the site plan, and they've essentially replaced the larger 4-story buildings that were previously proposed. The townhomes are obviously smaller buildings. Like the stacked flats, they each have private entries into their units. There are front and rear entry configurations, and the units, depending on each unit, have a mixture of 1-car garage attached and 2-car attached garages. As Jeff mentioned, the total number of units has been reduced from 282 to 268. As he mentioned as well, the 4-story buildings have been removed and replaced with 3-story buildings. The clubhouse has shifted from its previous location to a more central location, as you can see near the open space in the center of the project. On the east border of the property, and the westland border, because of the units, the configuration, we were able to increase, per Jeff's suggestion, the buffer there. It was 50 feet, and we've now been able to make it 60 feet, and we've added additional landscaping to that buffer as well. As far as the conservation areas, effectively, the MDQ has issued its permit for wetlands and for tree conservation. All of those areas are unchanged. We will not be doing any work that you haven't already approved in the previous one. All those areas were locked down, and there'll be no additional intrusions beyond what was already approved. Open space has increased by 11%, so in the process of changing the units out and reducing the density, we were able to add additional open space to the project. And lastly, the entranceway, landscape entranceway that you reviewed previously is with small minor tweaks that probably aren't even visible, is identical to what was submitted before. So overall, we believe that we've significantly improved on the PDD by increasing the open space, reducing the number of overall units, respecting the woodlands and the wetland conservation areas, reducing story height, and shifting to owner-occupied condominiums. With that, I'd like to introduce Wayne and have him make a short presentation on the architectural design of the project.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Wayne, can you hear me? Wayne Chubb with Hobbs & Black Architects. I think the best part of speaking is taking off the mask. David and Jeff did a good job of covering the site, but as you went through the elevations, there is two product types, but an iteration of the townhome. So as you enter the site, actually we'll start with this one. This is the front loaded townhome, we're calling it. So this is the primary unit you'll see as you come in off Lots Road into the property. So building on the modern farmhouse, if you kind of look at the definition or what people say, it's the modern farmhouse combines sleek, clean lines of contemporary design with the classic aesthetic of the familiar farmhouse. So what we did here is utilize the brick as a grounding plane to the building and strategically pulling it up into the different units. Trying to create the architecture with more of a vertical nature, so the board and batten is the white and kind of gray colors you're seeing there. And then accenting this with bringing in the warmth, as Jeff said, into the architecture with the wood product. Building on top of that is the little more contemporary window form, the little canopies over the entries, the balconies, fiber cement there. As you mentioned earlier, the materials are sitting over here, so as well as a picture of each of the products, so you can check those out at your leisure. Maybe we could scroll to the stacked flats. We tried to
get lots of pictures.
That's because David's demanding. So here we go. So there were some questions about the stacked flats, and if anybody has any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But basically, they're ranches. On the first floor here, you're seeing the non-garage side. So this is what you'll see if you're coming along Lots Road for those units. And so there's ranch units on the first level and the second level, and then there is some the third story that pops up there are for some bonus rooms to some of the second floor units. So those diverge from the ranch concept. But again, you can see the brick elements pulled up into the gables, trying to break down the massing of the building and pull in these wood accents into the contemporary window form and some of the door elements. I think that covers it, but I'm more than happy to answer any other questions should you have them. But our take in the beginning, we were challenged with, to reiterate it, was to bring something forward that would be attractive to a younger audience, new families, professionals, young professionals. And so we're excited and more than happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. You say that all the materials are right over there on the other side of the flag?
They are, and then there's a rendering here that matches those
Okay.
if you want to reference them.
Why don't we do this then? Why don't we take a couple of minutes for any of the board members who want to go over and take a look at the materials before we proceed with questions and answers and stuff like that? Is that okay?
Yeah, you
Sure.
can just kind of parade around, so.
Okay.
So.
You want to start that's closest to the,
Alan, you want to go first?
Maintain our separation.
This is just, Jeff, I mean, Greg, that's just regular on-street parking, right? There's nothing fancy about that, right?
no.
Just somebody's got to maintain those trees.
Yeah, I like that. I like
It
the way
looks
it's
nice.
broken up.
Yeah. I can go take a look.
So Wayne, what is the wood product made, the wood grain? Is that a fiber cement or is that a composite, other type of composite?
The industry is expanding by the day. What we're showing here is a composite material, so it's in line with some of, it's composite, so it's a man-made material that
So I know there's some.
stamps it out.
Well, I know there's some aluminum products that now are made that look like wood. You would never ever know they were aluminum. So I know there's a couple different products out there that are emulating that kind of natural wood without being natural wood. So
Yeah, it's another product. We've used those many a times as well. This is something that we've found has been successful
Okay.
in more of a residential accent material.
It looks like it's actually a PVC from the sample, but what is the product, Wayne?
It's like a PVC.
I mean, the manufacturer.
Oh, that one is Sagapore,
Oh,
that sample there. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
so it's heavy duty vinyl.
yes.
So there's pretty much no maintenance.
But it is an upgraded material. It is,
Right.
as far as
It has some depth to it.
the price point to it, yes. That comes with a full color line. I'm sure you'll start to see it more and more. It's really, we're finding getting a lot of attention and attraction.
We're actually seeing a lot of it on commercial buildings with retrofits of commercial buildings and things. So
Especially the aluminum product that
right.
there's various companies that make that too.
Okay, everybody's had a chance to see the materials. We have opened the public hearing, right? I think we did. Any audience questions or concerns? Yes, sir. Come on up to the podium over here. Yeah.
Robert McCausland, 2011 Lots Road. I know this has been going on for a couple of years now, I think, Jeff, hasn't it? This is a ongoing project, but I'm glad that we waited, took the time, found the right developer, it seems, that recognizes that the home ownership aspect here is the way to go. It looks like a good starting product. Do you have a price point, maybe? I'm not going to hold you to anything, but...
Yes, go ahead, please.
We expect that the units, and obviously there's different sizes, but they will probably start in the low 300s. I would say they're probably pretty comparable to what you see MI Homes building in Cherry Hill Village right now, their townhouse product, which has been very successful. So I would say low threes. Probably we might start right at 300 and then just see where the market goes, but 300 to 350.
And you're gearing that for the young professional?
Correct.
Basically?
Yep.
And you're at 100% ownership here. There's no rent to own or...
No, the no rental component. This is all for sale condominium, owner occupied.
Great. I think that's what needed in the area to anchor that. And it was supposed to be fill-in, but now it's become an anchor, so. The only thing is a traffic study. Has there been a traffic study that was developed anywhere?
Well, the traffic analysis is done with the original PDD, and basically since we basically rebuilt Lots Road and three-laned it, so the only thing the county will look at is the actual entrances into the development and what kind of tapers or turn lanes might be needed, so.
Well, I know it's been addressed already with the development from across to north. With the influx of traffic there, it demanded a new lane.
So, I mean, right now it's a 3-lane road, so Wayne County will look at, see if there's any turn lanes necessary. That'll be up to them at that point. But basically, the traffic analysis, when it was done last year, didn't indicate any additional improvements that were necessary.
That traffic analysis is available to the public if they want.
It's in the
Okay.
file that was done
Yeah.
in October of 2018 when the PDD came through.
Okay.
No, I'm just curious about the influx of Lots Road. You know, it's a 3-lane, like you said, it's a 3-lane road, but again, to be able to build that out and to throughout the whole corridor, is it going to be able to remain a 3-lane road? That's what you have to look at these times.
So,
I'm
Jeff,
sure the county would have a
Does
look
Wayne
at
County
that.
have any
Right.
plans to do anything, to your knowledge?
well, I mean, we spent $5 million building Lots Road, it's a 3-lane road. We upgraded it from 2-lane dirt road to a 3-lane road to provide for turning motions off and on the road. So it'll be up to them when they look at this entrance and determine whether or not any additional turn lane or bypass lanes will be needed when they look at it for permits.
Okay.
Also, the additional need for other infrastructure in the area. What's how do you address that, Jeff?
They haven't got through to site plan and to utility plans yet. This is a plan development, so our,
Well, I want to get off on the right start.
so
those things all
our,
have
they've
to
already,
be
they've already
addressed.
discussed sewer with the Township Engineering Office. So
Gentlemen,
there's-
good luck, and
Water's available
okay.
in Lots Road. Water was put in, that segment of
Looks like a
Lots Road.
project.
And the
Thank you.
sewer,
it's
the sewer will
available
be
to some,
evaluated.
not to all.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Daniel McCausland, 2011 Lots Road. Just a couple questions for the panel and the developer. Being this PDD again, are we going to reset the clock for another 2 years from October 23, 2018 to now?
No,
This is going to start over again?
no.
What's the timeline of construction?
I have another 4.5 years.
So,
The original PDD is for 6 years, so they have not requested an extension of that time period at this point.
so I'd ask the developer, what's your plans to break ground? Tentatively.
Tentatively, assuming, we were able to secure the approvals and permits and everything else, we would anticipate starting construction next summer. If we get delayed, then it could be, it could be summer of 2021, or we could be pushing into fall of 21, spring of 22. But as soon as we can get out there to put a shovel in the ground, that's our intent.
All right, so again, we're some ways off here again. Like I spoke to you last time, the drawings all look cool, hip, impressive. It looks great on paper, but when does it come to fruition? This is what you have to ask yourself, because, if you keep kicking this can down the road, time
Well, all
goes
we
on.
can, all we can do is what we're doing here and pave the way for the progress and for we have no controls over the economy, we have no controls over the market. We're hoping that this will be a successful project, and so we're proceeding with that in
I
mind.
understand, but you got to remember, we started off, this whole corridor was supposed to be a corporate park.
Right.
We started off as a corporate park in 1994.
Okay, that horse has long been dead.
No,
and
it's
you
not.
brought that up before.
I'm going to continue to bring it up because this is very important. Because if this project was to not come to fruition, what's the next project? The dead horse?
Because this is a PDD, the
Yes.
entire project is either a go or it's not.
That's
And
right.
if it's not, due to extenuating circumstances, something else would come, right?
But you have to remember,
We do not build, we're not developers. All we do is make possible those things happening.
but just take this for an example as a person who took some notes. The very first petitioner, the Fillmore project, had to have 75% brick. That was mandatory, okay? Now, we're going to different materials. Now, is that fair to the Fillmore people? Because they have to follow 75 or 50% brick. These are things I'm telling you. Time changes a lot of things.
Yes, it does.
And a lot of things change in time.
And you answered your own question just now.
I did not. I'm telling you how much more. This is a little bit of an uptick from what you approved before. Now, that might be exciting and that might be refreshing, but it may never happen.
It's true.
Thank you.
It's very true. Thank you. Anyone else? Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Support?
All right, I have a motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to start down at this end. And Commissioner Eggenberger?
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions, but I'm excited about the modern look. I think that's going to be something fun to have in Canton, something a little bit different. And I think it looks good. I think it's interesting. These flat stacks are unusual. But yeah, I'm excited to see something different. Thank you. And I appreciate that you made the effort to save as much of the wetlands as you could.
Okay. Commissioner Perkins?
I think it looks good. I'm set.
Okay. Commissioner Engel?
No comments, thanks.
Commissioner Zuber?
I really like the look of this. It's refreshing not to see red brick colonial, so I'm excited. So, thank you.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
You made our resident architecture happy. That is really great. If Dawn's happy, we're happy with that. No, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and they look great. I just want to ask a few questions. In terms of the market value, I mean, with your price, that, I know you were saying you're looking at the price value with what Cherry Hill Village, but did you do a market study at all in that area for the price you're offering?
Yes, we did. John Burns did a market study for us. They're a very large market study company out of California.
Okay, and they found that that price would be, I mean, obviously with the economy
Yes.
right now, we don't know.
Yes.
Okay, and those would be considered private roads, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so those are private roads, they'd be maintained by that condo. For your, the bylaws that you initially offer, are you looking to allow rentals?
You know, I hadn't even thought of it. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to it. We can look into it. Renting these units out is not at all my focus. We're looking for building the units and selling them.
Okay, now I also know, so on the second floor, you get there by stairs, there's no elevators, is that correct?
Correct.
So if somebody, I mean, you'll have a model out there, so if somebody wanted an ADA compliant unit, you would be able to offer that?
Yes, as far as the stacked flats, the first floor could all be accessible. The townhomes, on the other hand, are a three-story product that doesn't lend itself to that.
All right, I noticed also that your cars, in the one picture, they're kind of behind each other. So if you, that's how you'd have to pull in then, is that?
There is, I forget the exact number, there's a few units in this building as well as the townhomes that have, that's called a tandem. So yes, they still get a two-car garage, but one pulls in behind the other.
Okay, so each unit would have their own two-car where you'd have to pull in behind each other like that, okay.
But it's the same unit, yeah. So you have two cars, you want to be the last one home.
Right, right, okay. Also, another question. Oh, the vehicle. Okay, so in terms of recycling, I'm encouraging you to encourage recycling there. I know if it's a private road, a private condo, although if it's owned, they'd have to have recycling. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, they would have recycling. We would be provided recycling bins as a condo.
Okay, good. And did the fire department, I mean, in terms of the layout, did they review the access in terms of getting to some of those far out buildings that are further?
Yeah, there were a few adjustments to this based on the layout change that the fire department asked for, and they made those changes. And they'll look at it in more detail when we get the site plan.
Okay, so they did request that. All right, great. And I think that was it. Oh, one more. So what is the timing for Wayne County? After the board approves the PDD, then Wayne County would look at it?
Well, then they have to bring the site plan through, And then once they go in for engineering and permitting, then they'll submit to Wayne County for any improvements that they may need at their entry point. So they're a ways down. That's why, David indicated it'd be 2021 into 2022. By the time they go through site plan this year and they get done engineering next spring, it's a year away from probably construction, right, David? So, yeah, because they don't really get into the Wayne County process until they get into after site plan approval and into engineering approval.
Okay.
So,
All right, great. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Acharya.
So, you would not be extending the public road because you're going to use...
You want to pull your mic a little closer to
So you, in the background, you mentioned that you would not be extending the public road and utilizing the private road? Is my understanding correct?
I think you're referring to the Westland side?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we followed what the previous developer did, which is their private roads, which is sort of the nature of this type of product. And as the previous developer, we're not connecting the public roads in Westland to the eastern border of our property.
Okay.
We left it as is.
It looks good, though I'm not a big fan of PVC, but it looks good. Thank you.
Commissioner Okan?
Thank you. I think it looks great. I love the reduction from the 4-story to the 3-story, the increase in the open space. I'm excited about this and hope it does well. Thank you.
And Commissioner Green. Oh, that's me. Now, when I first looked at this project, I have to tell you, when I looked at the one building with the two different materials, I had this WTF. And then I looked at it, I'm going, oh my God, that is gorgeous. That is so different than what we've seen here in Canton. And I commend you. That was my first thought, is these architects did a really, really good job. But I have a couple of questions. This is, Jeff, you might want to answer this. Down at the south part of the project, there's what looks to be like it could be an emergency entrance onto lots.
exactly.
Is that a construction entrance or something like that?
Well, it could be used as both, but that's basically an emergency access, and this was a change. We had one on the original plan with a different building layout.
Right.
But, so they got rid of it, and then fire department says we still need an emergency access because of the number of units and the size of the project, they need 2 points of access.
Yeah, okay,
So,
good, because the first thing I thought of was with one major entrance, if that ever got
Yeah.
blocked.
I mean, they could very well use it as a construction entrance, depending on how they phase the construction also, but
Right.
it'll basically be like a brick paver type of, a grass paver type of emergency access.
Yeah. And excellent use of the conservation areas, especially with the pool being next to one, because I know those generate a lot of noise and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a really, really great project. In fact, this is obviously geared toward the young. I'm old, and I want to get young and live there, okay? I do have one question architecturally, though. On the garages, did you consider having at least some variety in the garage doors? Instead of just all being the same, like some with windows, some not, maybe different style doors. That was just something that came to my mind, that they're all the same. And everything else has such variety.
Yeah, we did discuss it, and I wouldn't say it's off the table. I mean, what we're showing is was meant to be as a backdrop, not to be an accent piece.
Right.
But some of them that maybe are in the front loaded, it's something we could look at.
You might want to consider that.
As we develop them, yeah.
Okay. That's all that I have. Do I hear a motion?
I move to recommend approval of amendment number 1 to the Wellington on the Willow PDD on tax parcel numbers, as noted. I'm not going to read all those. As proposed.
Support.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Okan?
Yes.
Commissioner Acharya?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
Yes?
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes.
All right.
Good luck to you. And what's their next step?
The next step will probably go to the Township Board on July 14th.
Okay, all right. Good job. Our
Thank you very much.
third agenda item, have a good night. Our third agenda item is the Meadows of Canton Minor PDD. This property is located west of Ridge Road between Cherry Hill and Salts Roads. Patrick, could you tell us more detail?
Yes, thank you. The proposal is for the Meadows of Canton, also recently named the Meadows of Cherry Hill because of some naming conflicts with other developments. So it'll interchangeably be referred to this evening likely as Meadows of Cherry Hill or Meadows of Canton, but it's the same thing. The proposal is for a minor plan development district. It's a minor plan development district because the size of the project is under 20 acres. So it'll be a one-step process through the Planning Commission and the Township Board for the plan development review. The applicant is proposing to locate 39 single-family residential site condominiums on about 15.8 acres located on the west side of Ridge Road between Salts Road and the ITC corridor. The project density of 2.47 residential units per acre is less than the maximum density of 4 units per acre permitted in the village edge area.
Excuse me, Patrick?
Yes.
Could you get a little bit closer to your mic?
Sure.
I don't know if anybody else is having problems, but I am.
There's just the
Yeah, I'll-
feedback makes it harder to understand, too.
Yeah, I'll lower the mask, and then I think there'll be
Okay.
a little bit less. The project density is 2.47 residential units per acre, which is less than the maximum density of 4 units per acre permitted in the village edge area of the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District. This is probably one of the few major undeveloped parcels within the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District, so it's unique to some of the other properties in the area that may look similar, but they're not in the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District. So even though it's in the R1 district, the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District is more or less the prevailing district, and we'll get into those requirements tonight. There's one entrance proposed on Ridge Road, and there's also a connection to West Ridge Estates of Canton to the west. That's proposed via an extension of the existing road. As I previously noted, the site is in the village edge area of the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District, and the underlying zoning district is R1. Although the original agreement for the Cherry Hill Village expired in 2014, the site is subject to the standards of the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District in Section 6.09 of the zoning ordinance. The Cherry Hill Village Overlay District requires all projects to be treated as a planned development and subject to the adopted Cherry Hill Village design guidelines. Therefore, the modification requests that we'll go through in this application are reviewed in the context of those design guidelines. And finally, each planned development district is required to demonstrate definite benefits to the community, and the project sponsor proposes the following definite benefits. First, maintaining 34.8% of the site as open space, which exceeds the 25% minimum. Second, providing a trail on the south side of the site between the development and Ridge Road. Third, preserving trees along the existing watercourse. And fourth, preserving existing trees around the perimeter of the site. Our analysis touches on several topics, and I'll narrow it down to probably 2 or 3 that are the most major. The first is the schedule of regulations and modifications, which is on page 2 of our analysis. There are 39 units proposed, and the density is 2.47 units an acre. The Cherry Hill Village Overlay District, which is the prevailing district in this regard, allows for up to 4 units per acre. So even though the density is a little bit higher than some of the surrounding areas, it's actually much lower than what's permitted by the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District. All lots in the proposed development are at least 7,500 square feet. And the remaining dimensional standards are subject to the R1 zoning district, although the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District standards of the zoning ordinance do incorporate the Cherry Hill Village design guidelines by reference. So the following, which are in bullet points on page 2 of our analysis, are the proposed modifications from the zoning ordinance. First, the proposed lot width is 60 feet. Although 150 feet is required in R1, the Cherry Hill Village design guidelines allow for widths from 50 to 90 feet wide. So the proposed 60-foot lot width is consistent with those guidelines. The next one is the proposed front yard setback of 20 feet, except for some front yards that are 15 feet on some non-access sides of some corner lots. The Cherry Hill Village design guidelines allow for front yard setbacks between 10 and 20 feet. The rear yard setback modification is proposed to be 30 feet. 50 feet is required in the R1 district for rear yard setbacks. For the side yard setback, there's a side yard setback of 5 feet proposed for the units. The Cherry Hill Village design guidelines allow for side yard setbacks from 0 to 10 feet, so the 5-foot setback is consistent with those design guidelines. The last 3 modifications are, first, that there are no horizontal offsets in the rear sides of the facade. The next is that the road easement width is 55 feet proposed, which is 5 feet less than the minimum of 60 feet for the road easement. And finally, the road location is within the required 25-foot stormwater protection buffer. The road will go over the drain there, so inevitably there are some encroachments proposed in that area. The second major item that we want to discuss in our review is the architecture and the layout. The architectural plans submitted are mostly consistent with the architectural design guidelines of the Cherry Hill Village Overlay District, and there are some unique elevations proposed for the corner lots as well as the lots that abut Ridge Road that are required to have 2 or more front building facades. However, we are concerned with the appearance of the facades of units 1 and 4 that face Ridge Road because the facades don't have the appearance or the orientation of a building front. We have some modified elevations that the applicant had emailed us last Thursday. We've printed those out and they're in front of you this evening. We also have them here on the iPad that we'll bring up on the screen once we get into some of those details for units 1 and 4. Another area of concern with units 1 and 4 by Ridge Road is not just that the facades that face Ridge Road don't have necessarily the appearance of a front-facing facade, but also the orientation of the building. The orientation of the building is inward toward the road that comes off of Ridge. Therefore, the backyards of those units that come right off of Ridge Road go right into the side yards of the existing houses along Ridge Road, as opposed to those units being turned 90 degrees and keeping the consistent form along Ridge Road. So our recommendation to the Planning Commission is one or both of the following alternatives for units 1 and 4. The first is that the southern facades of units 1 and 4 be treated with additional architectural interest to give them the appearance of fronting on Ridge Road. And or 2, that the areas of units 1 and 4 be sized as land divisions meeting the R2 district guidelines per the overlay guidelines, which would be frontage lots on Ridge Road. The dimensions for those required in the R2 district would be 100 feet wide and 20,000 square feet in area. This modification, if it were to be changed, of combining units 1 and 2 and units 3 and 4 to orient those buildings onto Ridge Road, that would result in the loss of 2 units, and it would require side entry garages to that internal street, which is Hedgewood Drive. Therefore, our recommendation to the Planning Commission is to evaluate the adequacy of the elevations, the building orientations, and those lot layouts to determine consistency with the design guidelines. The last item in our review that I want to bring up is the traffic impact. The project sponsor has submitted a traffic impact assessment that indicates that the intersection of the site access road, which is Hedgewood Drive there on the screen, and Ridge Road will operate at acceptable levels in all scenarios, including the AM and PM peak hours. The traffic impact assessment notes that there are existing deficiencies at the intersection of Ford and Ridge and at the intersection of Ridge, Denton, and Salts. And the impact assessment concludes that the addition of traffic generated by the proposed development would have a minimal impact on the operations of those intersections. Therefore, any improvements to those intersections are the responsibility of Wayne County and or MDOT as applicable. And finally, it's our understanding that MDOT is planning to install a left turn phasing this year at the intersection of Ford and Ridge Road. And on that, we'll defer to MDOT whether those phasing installations are planned, and if so, when. So that concludes our report. Our recommendation is approval of the minor plan development district, subject to any modifications to the plan required by the Planning Commission relative to the consistency with the design standards, especially the size and orientation of the proposed lots that face Ridge Road, those being units 1 and 4. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Is the project sponsor here? You want to come on up, sir? And while he's doing that, do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Support? All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Perkins to open the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing today?
Good. Great.
Good. Hope everybody is staying well and safe during these unprecedented times. My name is John Goldman. I'm the project sponsor and developer of this project. Some of you might recognize me. I've been to a few commission meetings before. I've been building and developing in Canton for 18 years now, and you know, I've got a very good reputation of and great relationships at the township, and I certainly welcome everyone's feedback for this this exciting project.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we're going to go right to the audience. Any comments or concerns on this project from the audience? Now's your time to speak. Come on up. This gentleman right here in the light blue shirt, come on up to, nope, this side. Or,
No,
yeah,
that's-
I'm sorry, you're right, you're right, you're right. I got my signals crossed.
John, yeah, you could just stay at the mic.
Dan White, 805 North Ridge Road. I'm a 60-year resident of Canton. About 22 years ago, I moved because I had subdivisions moving in behind me, and we're doing it again. My house on that lineup where the trailway is just the first house south of that. So I'm not pleased with the 60-foot lots, but the specific items are just the fact of if someone could describe in a little better detail what that pathway is, because that is directly in my line of sight. And then a second question is, how does a creek, which is a property line division, affect my property? And if there's a third item, is just that line of sight. I've always had a very robust amount of trees, and I don't really want to lose that seclusion if I can. Canton says that there will be more trees, and I guess I'm interested in hearing about them. That's it.
Okay. Would you like to address the tree issue and also the path issue?
So could you just tell me where this gentleman, is it?
South of the row of trees there and the walkway.
Yeah, that's the actually utility corridor. So.
Okay. So the access path, which was basically already established, which...
I wouldn't call it established. I haven't seen 3 people walk on it in 3 years.
Yeah, right. So I don't see that being disturbed. I see it being enhanced because of this pathway, but we're not planning to take down any trees on that route.
What are the white spots? Are you adding trees? It's my backyard. I think it is infringing on my privacy.
I think those are the regulated trees, John.
The white ones are existing trees.
I think the green ones are existing. The white ones I'm interested.
The white trees are regulated trees, which means they're over 6 inches in size. So they have to identify, Dan, all of the regulated trees under the tree removal ordinance.
And there are rings on them, and they are identified.
Right.
I'm looking for more privacy. I don't really want to share this subdivision with my line of sight.
Yeah. I mean, that existing pathway is an existing water main easement that runs through there. So that was when that path was originally established, is when the water main easement went through there to serve West Ridge. So that water main easement also serves John's property. So based on the layout of the property, we recommended that they kind of enhance that pedestrian path so people can get back out to Ridge Road, just as a general walking path. So I don't, what type of improvements were planned? That's just a crushed gravel path, right?
I believe so, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yeah, so they're not, it's not going to be paved or anything. So.
Right, right.
And on the interior of the site, when it comes off of the sidewalk in the north part of that, or the south part of that cul-de-sac, it will be concrete, but once it gets about to the pond, it will convert to crushed stone, and from crushed stone from the pond, or maybe a little east of the pond, all the way to the road to keep it more of a natural type of path.
So I guess to answer your question, it's my understanding that there's going to be more trees, not less trees,
In
when
what
it's all
area?
said and done.
Could you be specific?
Well, there's no. At this point, we're not at site plan, okay?
Right.
So right now, there's no proposed trees, additional trees shown in there. It's just whatever the existing tree cover is. The only reason why they're shown differently on this plan is that he identified, as I mentioned, the regulated trees are the ones in white. Those are the bigger trees. There's other trees along there, but nothing's coming out. It's an
Right.
existing corridor. So, you know, if there's gaps in there, I think John can take a look at whether there's gaps in there and whether or not there's additional trees that could be planted in there as part of the final landscape plan. But yes, but now that we understand what Mr. White's concern is, we can go back and take a look at it, so.
Jeff, is there a reason why we need that path?
Well, it's a utility corridor, so we need to get access to our water main to maintain it. So there has to be a path there that the township can drive on to maintain the water main and to flush the hydrants.
Can it stay as is?
I mean, right now it's a gravel path, right? No. So, Evan, what's the path comprised of currently?
I'm not really sure that there's much gravel there at all. I think when they built that, I think typically you would see a gravel path installed there, but I can't, unless
Okay.
it's just completely overgrown, I don't see any evidence that it was ever there in the first place.
Okay, so we'll have to.
So
do
this
that.
wasn't an intentional path, let's say, just for this, the new subdivision possibly to go over to the historic village as it? as
Well,
kind of-
West Ridge subdivision to the west, it's a water main easement.
Right, right,
So,
okay.
yeah.
So, but this is part of the parcel.
Right, and John
Yes.
granted an easement for the water main when West Ridge was originally built, because that was the way to get the water main from Ridge Road back into West Ridge to loop the line.
Right.
So do we leave it, so the question is do we leave it the way it is, or do we enhance it and make it a walking path so
Right.
people can use it? So those are the questions.
Right.
So.
Your thoughts on that, sir?
I'd leave it alone. I'm just not looking for multi-subdivisions to have a pathway that is absolutely in my backyard. The 40 trees that are back there right now, I maintain them, meaning I mow around them and whatnot. The owners of the property have done nothing with it. They've abandoned it, and I've maintained it. But I'm just looking at the amount of traffic. You know, I can hear West Ridge right now. This is going to be 3 times closer. That is one concern. The other one is the creek itself. I can't tell from those drawings what we really have. I've got a peninsula and a pond on my side, but the property, the new development is 50% of that creek. So it'd be a little bit difficult for you guys to redo the creek without affecting my site and my neighbors.
Nothing about the creek will be modified. The only change would be where the road crosses it on the north end. So that's the only change that will happen, is where the road has to cross the creek to get into the primary portion of it. So the rest of the creek will be maintained in its natural state.
And these are details that, going forward, if we go forward, would be taken up at the site plan issue, correct?
That's correct.
So would you like to be somewhat a part of that site plan discussion?
Seeing that I have 2 sides affected by it, yes, please.
Okay, is there any way we can stay in touch with him to let him know?
I
Because
get
it's not, if we go to site plan, it's not a public hearing per se.
We can keep in contact with Dan and Evan He can keep in contact with Dan. We know Dan, so.
Okay.
He's a long-term resident.
Would that be okay if you,
Totally fine. Public hearing, I didn't know how many layers of communication we might share. So I appreciate it. I can get a hold of Jeff.
okay,
We're just not, we're not quite that far along yet.
Right.
But if the planning commission knows your concern with what's going on in that strip, then they can take that into consideration in terms of their recommendations tonight.
okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name's Mike Chikala, and I live at 827 Ridge Road. My southern border is that pathway. That used to be a private driveway, limited access. Then when the subdivision behind us, they put that waterway in, and it's reverted to natural state, and my neighbor mows part of it. My concern is primarily my privacy, my security, and my property value. I've been there for 30 years. All I see there is a negative. That's a public access, open hours. Anybody and anybody can go there anytime they want. I don't like that. I don't feel safe about it, and I'd also like to be included in the planning discussion.
Okay. Will you see to that,
All right.
Jeff?
And again, I concur with my other neighbors. These are out of line and out of character with the other property around it. Aesthetically objectionable, traffic's going to be very high, and finally the creek. Since the subdivision behind us has gone up, the creek has flooded multiple times a year in the last couple of years. We need to address the watershed. Otherwise, myself and my neighbors, our backyards are flooded and muddy in the spring for the last couple of years. What is the city going to do about that, or the developer for that matter? Specifically the watershed.
Jeff?
Well, that'll, when Wayne County looks at the stormwater plan, they'll evaluate how the existing drainage patterns are working and the obligation of the developer. They have to maintain their own water into their ponds before they're outletted into the drain. So that helps manage some of the water that goes into the drain because it'll slow it down. But we'll have to, engineering has been brought, I think Mr. Castiva brought the issue with the ponding water to engineering standpoint. They'll coordinate with Wayne County on review of the drainage plans at the point in time they get that far.
Okay. All right. So bottom line is there's still work to be done, but it's all, the engineers will take all of that flow in its design. And there is not supposed to be an adverse effect on surrounding property, okay? That's the intent of the design, is that they capture the water that's supposed to be draining or falling on that property and not going elsewhere. That's always the intent.
But is there a feedback loop where they audit that and find out? Because I have a pole barn behind my house, and I can't even access that in the spring because I got a moat around it, basically. Can you point out?
Well, part of it depends on what the Wayne County, how they will evaluate it and whether or not there's an existing condition and whether or not the drainage plan for the new development will improve that. It can't make it any worse. So we're not sure what the issue is. Engineering has to get with Wayne County to evaluate what the problem is with the current creek.
Gotcha.
So I'm not sure why all of a sudden, because Westridge really doesn't drain into this section of the creek. They have their own ponds and they drain elsewhere. They drain to the north and they drain to the west. So they don't directly drain into this particular drain. But there may be some.
Is there an avenue for feedback for those who live there and know what the drainage is like
presently? I think what they need to do is contact Bill Surchek, our township engineer. Bill's aware of the issue. It has been brought to our attention. He has to coordinate with Wayne County. So Wayne County Drain, it's their responsibility to make sure it functions properly, and that any stormwater plans meet Wayne County standards for stormwater. So we can, as we go through the engineering process after site plan, the township engineer can't approve a site plan or an engineering plan until Wayne County approves a storm permit. But they can make, they'll have to evaluate the overall paving and grading and drainage plans for the
Okay.
development to make sure that no additional adverse impact occurs with this development. If there's an existing condition that's not caused by the developer, he's not required to fix it. He just can't make it any worse.
Right.
But we need to address what's causing the current problem, aside from Mr. Goldman's project.
But there's nothing better than input from people who live there, so.
Well, he can talk to
He
Bill
can talk to Bill Surchak.
He can coordinate with Bill Surchak,
Right.
our township
Okay,
engineer.
do you hear that, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, so there's an avenue for you to
Yeah.
weigh in on what is actually going on there.
And who do I contact specifically?
Our
Bill
township engineer,
Surchak.
yeah. Yeah, Bill Surchak is our township engineer in our engineering services division. So he's been made aware of the problem, so, they're not sure what the issue is. But other than that, it's going to be Wayne County Department of Public Services. They handle all the stormwater plans.
Okay, so now as a resident of the southern property line of that walkway, how do I get invited to the site plan discussions?
I will have Mr. Priest, Evan Priest is the project sponsor's engineer. He will coordinate with all of the residents during site plan stage of the project to address the pathway and the drainage and all of those kinds of issues that you bring up tonight.
Okay,
So,
all right.
So
Fair
he'll
enough, sir?
contact us, he'll give us a mailing or something?
yes. I will
Thank
have Evan coordinate directly with you. He has all of your addresses.
That's true, I guess.
So-
If you want to leave email addresses, if that's more convenient, then you can get those to Jeff and he'll get them to me. That would be fine too.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Anyone else? Yes, come on up, please. Jeff, are you missing the little boom protection there?
Yeah, it fell, it won't stay on, yeah, it fell off.
Your peas are popping.
So.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Linda Swisher. We're at 800 Ridge Road. We're across from your path there. My question is, when all of this came about and all the discussions were going on, we were told that there was only going to be 29 houses being built around there. It looks like there's 30-something now. Is there something that changed in the plan, or were we misguided on that?
You talk to that?
There was, our understanding is, there was a previous site plan proposal or a PD proposal for the site that did have fewer units, but that is a project that wasn't built on. So we're kind of starting from scratch here with a new development based on the standards of the ordinance. So whatever was proposed before, it wasn't carried through, so now we're reviewing a brand-new plan.
Okay.
Then, with all of this going on in the little stretch that we're in, are you guys going to extend that 25-mile zone? Because they run down that section 50, 60 miles an hour. And with all this new development and all the kids coming around, there's going to be issues.
And speed limit's 25 there?
No, it's not. It stops at my house, and it's 45 from
Right.
my house to the end.
Right.
And people go 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. It's horrible.
Part of the problem with that is Michigan State Police sets the speed limits on rural road sections. So in Cherry Hill Village, Wayne County they can either set it at 25 or it's 55 unless there's a curve or something in the road. So essentially they have to go through a speed study if requested to determine whether or not what the 80th percentile, I think, is the standard of speed along that section of road. So that's something that Canton Township doesn't control at all. So Wayne County Road, they would have to make a request to the Michigan State Police to do a speed study to modify the speed limit on the road.
Okay, all right. So is there something that she can do to help that along?
She would have to petition to Wayne County to have a speed study done for that section of road.
Okay, all right.
So we have the same issue south, along that section of Ridge Road, south of Cherry Hill Road, where it's a local road section. Once you get to a certain point, south of Ridge Road, it's basically 45 to 55 miles per hour. And as we get more houses built along Ridge Road, that front on Ridge Road, we prefer the speed limit to be reduced, but we don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
Without Wayne County petitioning Michigan State Police.
Doesn't make sense that the speed's that high. I came down that road tonight, and I would have gotten here sooner if I'd known I could have gone faster.
Oh, I mean, they do, once they see that 25 ends, they gun-ho it. I mean, and we've got kids around now with
Yeah.
all these subdivisions coming
Well,
in.
and it's 25 everywhere else around Cherry Hill.
2 years ago,
and
I had a head-on
Cherry-
collision and the car landed in my front yard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if somebody can help us with that because now that you've got all this new homes going in, and I still don't understand how it went from 29 to 39. I mean, I guess if it's not complete, but I think that's something that we should all, we're all veterans around here, 30, 35 years. We moved out here and brought our families because we wanted this style of living. I get it, you gotta move forward with life and things gotta progress, but the people that are left, we should have some type of say of what's going on because everybody's just bargaining around us.
And that's why we have public hearings.
So I would like to be a part, if we could be a part of that when they start progressing, we would like to be a part of that too, if possible.
Okay? That's a function that we always encourage our developers to maintain communication with all the surrounding properties, especially when you're building something new that hasn't been developed for years and forever. A lot of concerns, and you can understand that. So
Understood.
We'd appreciate it if you would do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Anyone else? Come on up. The gentleman there in the, yeah, you, sir. And then you're next. In fact, you might want to head on over there and just be prepared.
Maintain your distance, though.
Yes, sir.
833 North Ridge. I live just south of the entrance to the new development.
Your name, please?
Matt Rose.
Matt Rose, thank you.
So we have not been here for as long as the rest of the residents, but when we did move out here, we were under the impression that we'd be getting kind of a similar feel. We didn't know what the plans were, but with a giant field next to us in Canton, we kind of expected it was going to be developed at some point. Most of the things, or most of the questions I have have already been asked by other people. The home count, the speed, the path doesn't directly affect us, but it's pretty close to directly affecting us because people are going to be coming across the front of our property. The things that we haven't seen yet, the retention pond or whatever that's going to be above or to the north of our property, is that going to be something that is full? Is there safety measures around that? Because we have a young daughter that that becomes an issue. We don't have a water feature around our house. Are there considerations for that? Is there going to be any kind of trees planted to the north of our property? Because in the old plans that I didn't know existed, that I just saw recently, there was one home there and a much larger retention pond. And the other consideration there is that something that is expected to dry out and become muddy and, you know, an eyesore in the summer when it gets hot out? So those are
Jeff,
some of our
that's a
concerns.
wet pond, right?
That is.
Evan can address that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that particular one by Mr. Rose's property, which they're being zoomed in on there, is supposed to be a bioretention area. So it will drain dry and have, you know, wetland plantings in it rather than being an open water kind of pond.
Okay.
Which, if you saw the old plan, there was a really big open water pond in that same location. So this is just intended to carry the rear yard drainage from those first few lots just overland into that, filter out through the plants and the soil, and then outlet to the creek. Okay. There shouldn't be standing water there at all for you to worry about.
There's no permanent water level.
Correct.
Okay, so that's half of the concern. The other half is that becomes, it's obviously not part of our backyard, but looking out from our home, that's kind of what we see. So is that going to be basically a muddy hole? Are there considerations for that?
Mr. Rose, the bioretention areas generally have kind of a middle area which takes the water and filtrates it into the thing. So you'll see the different seeding areas around the pond. So there's different zones in that bioretention area with different native seed mixes that basically will grow in different hydrant conditions. And you'll see around the edge, there are some evergreens there and the kind of crook of
Okay.
that. So essentially, you shouldn't see anything but like a grassy meadow as the wetland vegetation and the grasses kind of fill in. For the first couple of years, it might look a little messy because
Sure.
they take a while to establish, but essentially, they're not intended to be mowed. They're intended to be left natural, like a natural wetland would be, because they're supposed to function like nature once they grow in. So.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
The other concern I have is with, trees on the other side of the creek, but it sounds like that's been addressed. And going forward, I'd like to add my name to the list of people to communicate with as far as the building.
Yeah, we'll make sure that Evan gets together with everybody.
Yeah, whoever
there,
I have to
so.
reach out to, or
Yeah.
if there's going to be a mail or anything.
Yeah, I think they've got a copy of your letter, so they've got your contact information.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
And you are opposed to that path, right?
I don't think it's necessary, no. And I don't think it's going to have an intended impact or a good impact on the people already living here, as far as, basically echoing their comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And gentlemen, there?
Good evening. My name is Jim Costiba. I reside at 1015 North Ridge Road. Thank you for the opportunity here at the public hearing this evening. I'm hopeful that all of you received and reviewed my letter or email comments regarding this proposal. And while I have no intention to recite the letter verbatim, I would like to highlight the primary points for the formal record this evening. And as I indicated in that letter, I indicated that number one, it's my view that the development as proposed is not consistent with the Cherry Hill Village Overlay Plan, which had indicated that acreage this far away from the village core was to be considered village edge. And as such, it was intended to be established and developed with estate-sized lots of homes between 90 and 105 feet wide, such as the village edge development that's found on Taft Road, Taft Drive, just west of Denton, north of Jackson in the village. The previously approved PDD did comply with this objective and had lots of 90 feet to 105 feet wide. Secondly, the development as presented and has been pointed out by a couple of other neighbors is incompatible with the existing neighborhood and your master plan goals for the area. All of the homes fronting on Ridge Road, with one exception in this area, are on parcels that are of 1 acre in size or larger. Permitting a subdivision with such small lots is an affront to the character of the area and undermines our investments. It's contrary to the vision of the master plan the commission itself established for this area. The underlying zoning here, has been pointed out, is R1, and that R1 underlying zoning reflects both the existing neighborhood and the intended low-density development within the township's comprehensive planning. Your master plan for the surrounding properties and the general area is low-density residential at 2 dwelling units per acre. Development of this site should be consistent with your own master plan goals. 3, the developer has provided no rationale or justification for the proposed 39% increase in the number of lots, nor how it complies with the village edge objectives of the Cherry Hill Village plans, nor your master plan. Let me add to these points this evening. Common real estate due diligence would support my contention that developers knew or should have known that the previously approved PDD and its estate 28 lots. As the owner of multiple properties, I too recognize the objective of maximizing returns on investment. I seek those returns through my own efforts and expenditures without the expectation that the local government is there to simply hand me more profit. It is not the responsibility of the Planning Commission nor our elected local government to ensure even greater financial returns to the developer. If approved, this incompatible and inconsistent development would be little more than a financial gift to the developer now attempting to squeeze as many lots as possible into this site. Further, I know how traffic concerns are frequently cited by many objectors to any proposal that would generate additional vehicle trips on roadways that are already under capacity. I don't object to new residents having the same access that I enjoy to the roadway network. But with the development as proposed, not only would we be seeing the impact of a 25% increase in the density from the previously approved PDD, Ridge Road would also be faced with the 30, 50, or potentially 70-plus lots or dwellings in the West Ridge Estates, who will now most likely utilize the Hesperus Drive connection to gain paved access to the roadway network rather than traveling out through unpaved Napier Road. Thus, the real-world impact to Ridge Road traffic should also be a consideration in the density the Commission suggests for the Meadows development. I suggest that Township staff and the developer explore the possibility of having the Hesperus Drive access appropriately restricted and identified as emergency use only, at least until such time as Napier Road is paved. Lastly, both the developer and the staff review indicate that substantial open space is being provided. I think it is past time that the Planning Commission recognize that retention basins are not open space in the common or practical understanding of the term. They are truly more akin to a utility, providing important stormwater retention to enable the development to comply with laws and capacity requirements of stormwater management. I'm not sure about you, but I can't recall any time when I've seen Canton families or individuals taking a stroll around the old retention pond or sitting down around them for a picnic lunch. Calling retention basins public open space is as faulty as calling telegraph poles vertical sculpture art installations. Retention basins perform as a utility and shouldn't be counted as open space for density calculations in this or any development in Canton. Once again, given the proposal's lack of consistency with your own master plans and the Cherry Hill Village Plan, its incompatibility with the existing neighborhood, coupled with the absence of any justification for such small lots and an increased density at this location, I hope the Planning Commission will reject the Meadows of Cherry Hill PDD as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Come on up. And anyone after her? We'll kind of get them lined up. Anyone after that? All right. Hello.
Hi, my name's Sandra Jackson, and I live at 826 Ridge Road. We're the last house on the right just before the new cul-de-sac, which was a big disappointment to me. When they were building it, I thought, where are they going to park if they get visitors? It proved I was right. Last summer I came home, someone was having a party on that cul-de-sac, and they were parked all over my grass. I immediately told them they was going to have to move. They kind of looked at me like I was stupid. Thank God my husband came home. And he and Ben ran them all off the grass. And then I noticed, I put a sign out there, no parking. The neighbors on down the road on the left had to put signs up because they were parking on their grass. And I want to know what kind of parking provisions there's going to be, especially on the one that comes off of Ridge Road there. There's just no room to park in those cul-de-sacs, and I don't think there's much room.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's going to be a problem with that or not. Is there a space on the street for people to park if they visit?
Well, one, this is not a cul-de-sac, and two, the street is wide enough to park on one side, just like most of our developments are. So I'm not, the cul-de-sac that they're talking about is part of the Landings development, and that cul-de-sac was part of a consent agreement between the landowner at the time and the township to resolve a lawsuit between all of Landings.
Very bad design. Sorry.
So, you know, unfortunately, we didn't have any control over that. I mean, with 7 lots, you wouldn't expect people parking on Ridge Road.
There's more than 7 houses.
On the cul-de-sac there, I think there's 7 or 8 houses on the
I
cul-de-sac.
think there's 9.
Okay, there's 9, okay. But if one person is having a party, that was the problem, and obviously they didn't have enough room on the road to park. I don't know what kind of restrictions there are from Wayne County on parking along Ridge Road, along, you know, the shoulder of the road.
But they were parked on my grass.
Well, that's a different thing, but what I'm talking about is there may not be a restriction from parking along the shoulder of the road. If they're parking on your grass, obviously they're trespassing, and that's a problem, and you just need to call the police at that point for a trespass
We threatened
issue.
to, but they finally moved them. They moved them on
Right, so I
down
mean,
by
that's I don't know how else to respond to somebody parking on your property if they're not supposed to. That's a trespass issue.
Well, I'm
So-
just concerned if it's just going to draw more problems with that one coming out onto Ridge Road.
So, well, I mean, they've got an internal road system, and there should be plenty of, you know, because of the way the roads are, there's plenty of space to park on the roads. Obviously, if somebody's having a party, you're not going to park on Ridge Road and walk all the way in across the creek to somebody internally there. You know, people just have to be courteous with other people's
Are
property.
there going to be any
so-
kind of sidewalks? Because right now, we have got a lot of bicycles and walking, and I'm just afraid somebody's going to hit. Like Linda said, traffic is very fast right there.
Right.
And
And that's why we're trying to get pathways interconnected so they can get all the way down into the main part of the village. At some point in time, you know, the township will come through with a gap program and try to fill those gaps, you know, along Ridge Road to get a continuous sidewalk or pathway system through there.
that would be good.
At this point, though, that requires easements from every single property owner along Ridge Road that has property on Ridge Road. So obviously, if a property owner doesn't grant an easement to the township, we can't build a sidewalk. So that's part of the problem of getting gaps filled is some property owners don't have a problem with that. Some people don't want people traversing across the front of their property. So whether it's Getty's Road or Beck Road or wherever we have gaps, that's always an issue in trying to get easements from the property owners.
Well, I just worry about the people. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Move to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to go back down here to Commissioner Oken, and let's talk about this.
Yeah, just a couple comments. My major concern with this development is, I mean, it is in the village edge area, which is the 4 units per acre. I'd like to see what a development looks like with that 4 acres, or that 4 units per acre. I think right now we're squeezing a lot of stuff into a little space. With regards to that path down on the south, I don't think it's needed. They have a proposed sidewalk in front of, next to their streets that leads out to Ridge Road, so I don't see why we can't leave that path as is. But again, my major concern is the density. I'd like to see the 4 units per acre that it was intended to be, and go from there.
They're only at 2.5 units per acre with this proposal.
There's only 2.5 units per acre on this. So we're actually below the allowable density of 4 units per acre.
I think the issue is everything else around it.
But-
Hang on, I think the issue is everything around it, and where the residents are saying it's not compatible with the development patterns directly along the frontage of Ridge Road. So part of it is the master plan. Mr. Casiva says it's not consistent with the master plan. It is consistent with the master plan because the master plan has it within the Cherry Hill Village Development Area. It's designated as the village edge area within the master plan and the edge area. It's that the area to the north of it and to the west of it is 1 and 2 units per acre. So this is the last piece of Cherry Hill Village that hasn't been developed yet.
Yeah, again, it just
Right.
looks like a lot of stuff in a small area.
Right. So, well, part of it is you've got the creek that runs through that eats up a lot of the development property. And then, you do have the stormwater ponds that eat up a little bit more, but you've got a lot of area, up and, along the drain edge, which are part of the common open space areas. So, I mean, the pond area is in the one corner, which is hard to develop anyway because it's in the corner of the property. So you have a lot of other areas that'll be up in the north part of the property that'll be retained in their native state. So, part of it has to do with the function and the geometry of the property and what can reasonably, be laid out with that geometry. So this essentially, the road system is almost the exact same road system that was originally approved back in 2004 when the original site plan came through, when it was under the old PDD agreement. So what Mr. Goldman has done is he's done a little bit smaller lots on the interior to get a few more units in, but that doesn't mean that nobody else that would have come through, other than the original developer, would have done the same thing under the Cherry Hill Village guidelines. So
Jeff,
so our concern is we want to make sure that the Ridge Road frontage area is consistent with the development patterns with the other houses along Ridge Road. So the other houses are going to be on the other side of the creek, which is pretty heavily treed along the creek. And, it is compatible with what is being built kind of catty corner to it, just to the south and the west, on the other side of the power lines with Concord Park. Those are 55-foot wide lots. The lots on the other side of Ridge Road are 55-foot wide lots. So these are 60 feet or wider. So we have to look at the context of what we're in and make sure that, one, we recognize what's around it and be sympathetic to the existing residents in terms of what they are living with in terms of lot orientation and size along Ridge Road, but also recognize that it is still part of the village. So there has to be, a happy medium there. So I just wanted to clarify that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I think that the only issue that we're really dealing with is in the Village Edge area is what is compatible with the houses along Ridge Road, and that's kind of where we've tried to approach this to make sure that we reach that
Jeff,
that happy medium between existing residents and what Cherry Hill Village desired to be at one point in time.
The underlying zoning for this is R1, correct?
The underlying zoning is Cherry Hill Village Overlay District. R1 was the original zoning. The overlay district wipes out the underlying zoning. So R1 is just a comparison point as to what everything else around it is zoned along Ridge Road. So under the Cherry Hill Village District guidelines, and that's what Patrick's analysis was, is, okay, this is what R1 requires, but this is what's allowed in the Cherry Hill Village District. Mr. Costiva makes a point that, the original intent was to do larger lots on the edge of the village. Well, that happens in certain locations as you bleed out from density, but we're looking at a little pocket here. So do we treat the entire 16 acres that way, or do we just, concentrate on making sure that the Ridge Road pattern into the village is maintained?
But this is actually, this would be actually an isolated piece of that puzzle, right? It would not have a connection directly to Cherry Hill Village and the...
Right, but this is, right, it is a little slightly, isolated piece, but it is still part of the village. It leads into the village. You've got the piece right across the street, which was the landings, which basically Denton Road was realigned, and the landings is kind of split into two pieces, the triangle piece and the other piece on the other side of Denton. Those are also on the edge of the village. Those are 55-foot wide lots. No, well, not originally, though. Originally, as part of the overall concept plan, those were also 55-foot wide lots, and actually, part of the landings had some attached housing in the original concept plan. So the consent judgment kind of laid it out into 55-foot wide lots because that's what Cherry Hill Village originally allowed. The issue, what we didn't get control over in terms of the consent agreement, was how it looked, how the road network functioned. We would not normally want a cul-de-sac in Cherry Hill Village. That wasn't a typical street pattern in the village. So those are the kinds of things that we weren't able to control as a planning commission and board with the consent judgment. Basically, they did a layout. They basically ended up with a court settlement on the overall layout. And, basically the developer that sued us didn't want to do, Cherry Hill Village style homes or layouts. But he wanted the Cherry Hill Village density, and he got the Cherry Hill Village density. So we have to be this is basically in line with the landings, and it's on the same edge of the village. It's the north end of the village all the way across. So we have to make sure that we maintain that context and make sure that we don't force something on this property that's inconsistent with what's been approved on other similar parcels, consent judgment or not. So otherwise, we're going to end up with another consent judgment, and then we won't be able to control the development at all.
But aren't we obligated to at least consider the immediate surroundings? If there's not a direct connection in density to the other core of the village, then we're isolating this and to the detriment and possibly of the other surrounding properties that are already there.
Okay, West Ridge is between 2 and 3 units per acre overall. They have a little bit larger lots, but essentially it's still 2 to 3 units per acre. They've got R2 and R3 zoning in West Ridge. The property adjacent to this site in West Ridge is R3. John is asking for less than 3 units per acre. So even though the lots are smaller, the overall density is the same, given the natural features on this property, because the drain eats up a good portion of this site.
But in order to make this work, we would have to approve a boatload of modifications.
Well, the modifications are based on R1. So the modifications are somewhat of a misnomer because the Cherry Hill Village guidelines, they're in line with the Cherry Hill Village guidelines. So in effect, the modifications are just a comparison to R1. They're not really true modifications because we have to follow the Cherry Hill Village design guidelines under the overlay district. So, and Patrick laid out where they do and where they don't match the overlay district guidelines. So the issue that you have to deal with is whether or not the form of development is generally compatible with the surrounding area, and our concern is how those lots lay out along Ridge Road. That's our major concern from a planning perspective. So it is consistent with the master plan. It is consistent with other developments you've approved, and I think we need, in the 27 years of me sitting in this chair, you've never ever not allowed the development to be consistent with the master plan in terms of its overall density. If this was master planned 3 per acre on the master plan, you would rezone it to R3. So essentially, it's master plan on the master plan up to 4 units per acre, and we have to figure out what makes sense given the context of this site with the rest of the development and everything else around it, including the landings. Because even if the landings was not a consent agreement, it would still be 55 to 60-foot lots over there, because that's what the original PDD originally called for. We actually had 2 and 4 unit buildings mixed in with the smaller lots and sections of the landings on the original concept plan under the original PDD. Given the context of the economy, obviously those attached units went away, and it all became single family. But essentially, this isn't really any different than the landings from a density standpoint.
Okay.
So
let's hear what the other commissioners have to say.
It's been a long time since we talked about Cherry Hill Village and its origination from 20 years ago. This is basically the last piece of that original plan development that expired in 2014.
Gotcha.
So.
Commissioner Acharya?
I have concerns about the design and the orientation on the units facing the Ridge Road, and it looks a little more dense than it should. I think there are just too many houses, too many units in the area. The entire design looks very dense. So those are my concerns.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Graham Hudak.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight and giving your objections or your thoughts. So basically, I just want to back up. It is consistent with the master plan because you're saying it's less than 4 units per acre. We're at 2.47.
Yeah, the master plan is the Cherry Hill Village development plan for this area. So.
In the plan, it also said there's 15.8% of open space. Does that include the retention pond, or is that elsewhere?
The overall project open space, it's based on the gross of the site, so it includes the pond, and the areas that are included in the drain area. And the reason for that is that the zoning ordinance defines the open space as the percentage of the gross of the site. So essentially, as Mr. Kostiva noted, that the pond is included as part of that open space calculation for this project, but it's also included in the open space project of all the previous projects that have been approved because of how the ordinance has been applied in that regard.
What is without the pond, what is the open space?
It would probably be 25%, because the drain area and the area to the north of the drain there up in the upper corner eats up most of the open space area. So the pond area, looking at it, is probably, Evan, would you say about 10% of the site?
Pond, 10% of the entire site, is that what you said?
Yeah, out of the 35% open space, how much of that is the pond?
I don't know if it's that much, but.
So, yeah. So essentially, without the pond areas, they would still have 25% open space. Because Evan said he didn't think the ponds would eat up 10% of the site.
Okay.
It's close, so more or less.
So Jeff, you had made a comment a second ago, basically stating that we have to compromise with the surrounding area in terms of being compatible.
Well, I think we need to be consistent with other development decisions we've made within the village that are, similar in location and it's zoned up to 4 units per acre. The Cherry Hill Village Overlay Zone allows up to 4 per acre.
When, sir, the public hearing is closed.
So so you have to make sure you're making a determination of whether or not this is compatible with the overall village development plan. And you have to consider what's along Ridge Road, because this is basically fitting into where existing frontage lots are, which is a little bit atypical from the rest of Cherry Hill Village.
But originally, we did have 28 or 29 lots approved for this
29,
area.
yeah.
So the fact that that has increased is really a numbers game, and the question does come, why? I mean, if we had it planned once and we were accepting 28, 29 units, why would we want to increase to 39?
Well, that plan may very well originally come in at 38 units. Just because they came in with larger lots at that time and you accepted it doesn't mean that you wouldn't have accepted more at that time. That just has to be one particular plan on a very small portion of the overall plan development. I mean, this is 16 acres out of basically 450 acres of planned development.
So 39 units at that time would have.
So, I mean, you just have to make a determination of whether or not you feel this is consistent with the overall Cherry Hill Village design guidelines.
Okay.
Could I add something to that point? Sorry,
Sure.
just one point. We added property as well. So whatever was proposed 15 years ago, which is now long expired, more property has been added here. So
On a percentage, how much more property did you add? Would you say?
It was a couple more acres, about 2 more acres of the property, so 12, 15% around there, 12%.
Okay. Commissioner Zuber? I'm sorry. Okay, if you had more.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
So the minimum for this is allowing a width of 60 to 90, 60 being the minimum that's allowed, correct? So we're basically
50. They could go down to 50 in the village.
So the minimum they could have met was 50.
Right.
Okay. Is there a reason we couldn't even look at those 7 houses there and reducing the amounts?
That's up to you to determine what's consistent with the development patterns. So you can make a recommendation that they reduce the number of lots up near Ridge Road. You could make a recommendation that they reorient the lots as recommended so they face Ridge Road. You could accept his proposal to make sure that those lots on Ridge Road face the road from an architectural standpoint. You can make a recommendation of whatever you feel is appropriate given the village design guidelines.
Okay, thank you. I want to just also say I do agree with reducing, because as you know, when you build roads, they will come. They do. And I agree with that statement that when people will start coming from Napier. Salts and Denton is a bad corner. It really is. Do you know what the status of what's happening with that right
Well,
now?
when Westridge came in and they did their traffic impact study, we knew that intersection was warranted for a light. You know how long it takes Wayne County to put a light in. That intersection was originally designed for a roundabout, so there's plenty of right-of-way there. Wayne County will probably never do the roundabout, but they are on the hook for doing the light. When Westridge came in, because it was already a deficiency, Westridge, as part of their definite benefits, improved Ridge, or included Ridge and Ford Road, and they put in the turn lane on Ridge and Ford Road, as well as expanding out the Ridge Road in front of their subdivision and across the street in front of Pulte's, in terms of the subdivision across the street, and widen that out to make sure the turn lanes were taken care of. So Westridge did take care of a lot of the existing deficiencies at Ford and Ridge. You know, Patrick mentioned that Wayne County, or MDOT is basically putting the left turn signals in at Ridge and Ford. Those are under design and should be underway within the next 6 to 12 months. So they're taking care of that light and the light in front of the school. They're improving both of those signals because of the existing deficiencies on Ford and Ridge and in front of the charter school. So that will happen. And that's already in the design process with MDOT. How long it'll take Wayne County to get to putting a signal in at Salts and Ridge, I don't know.
So that's something to push on.
But that's been an existing deficiency for some time,
right?
Given the increased traffic through that intersection. So.
Well, I hate to add to it, and also, I mean, in terms of using the Hesperus as an emergency use only, I think that's a good idea until Napier ever becomes paved, just to reduce some of the traffic there.
Part of what we do, this is a two-edged sword when you actually, we basically, when Westridge came in, they didn't want to put a stub street in there, but our policy for the past 30 years have always been interconnecting subdivisions so that somebody that lives here doesn't have to drive 2 miles out of their way to get into Westridge and vice versa. So will there be a little bit of cut-through traffic from Hesperus to Ridge Road? Based on the road orientation here, it's not a direct route through there. Most people are not going to go through there to cut through there unless they're going south on Ridge into the village. So this isn't going to take any traffic off of Napier, obviously. If somebody's going up to Ford Road, they're going to still go up Napier. So we talked about Napier Road when Westridge came in. We've talked about the needing to pave Napier Road. The traffic study on Napier Road, when Westridge came in, the warrants were not there to pave Napier Road. So at some point in time, will Napier Road get paved? I have no idea. But in order to basically just make that an emergency exit, from a planning perspective and our past policies of always having interconnected developments, I would not recommend, other than during construction, to keep it cut off. I think it should be a permanent connection to provide interconnectivity between the two developments. But that's, our general planning policies we've followed for a long time, and that you have too. Generally, we always want those interconnections between neighborhoods, because we don't want to have people drive miles out of their way to get from one neighborhood to the other. So.
Okay, well, I'd also like to support, I know it's in the future and we can't do that here, but keeping it at 25 miles an hour. But I'd also like to make a recommendation. So there's 7 on the entry road right now. I'd like to recommend that we look at 3 on the south side and maybe, right now there's 3 on the south and 4 on the north. So maybe looking at combining the 2 on the north to create 2 lots and combining the first 2 on the south, maybe lose 3 lots and face them towards Ridge rather than people looking at the side of houses. So reorient them to facing Ridge. And it would reduce the amount, but that's the recommendation I would like to make.
What specific recommendation are you making? To combine which 2 lots?
Yes. Maybe lose 3 of the lots, combine the 2 on the north side to create 2 lots and the first 2 on the south side and reorient them. Reorient the ones on the end. So you want
all 3 lots on the south side to be 1 lot and combining the first 2 lots on the north side, so you would have 1 lot there and then 2 more. So losing essentially.
So you just have
3.
1 house on the south side?
Now let's see, I wrote this down, so I think combine the 2 on the north side to create 2 lots and combine the first 2 on the south side. So yeah, you would just combine the first 2 on the south side and you would have 2 on the south side and you would reorient the one towards
Ridge Road. Where would you have on the first 2 lots on the south side, where would you have the orientation go?
Towards Ridge Road. face Ridge Road rather than the side of the
And
house.
they have side entrance garages?
Right. It's already designed with a landscape buffer along the road within the front yard, not a typical berm, but it's already designed. I think, aren't we right, Patrick? Because we didn't put a berm there. We wanted to maintain some natural landscaping along the roadway as a front yard. But right now, those houses are still oriented towards Hedgewood and with some architectural enhancements towards Ridge. So your recommendation is to combine 1 and 2, and combine 4 and 5, and combine 6 and 7?
Yes, that would be.
Okay.
Very good.
And
So,
does 3 still orient on the same way it is now?
yes, it'd have to be, right? I mean, you wouldn't see
I
that
don't know.
from Ridge Road, because if you're combining 1 and 2 and you're turning it towards Ridge, that's one lot.
So 1 and 2 would face Ridge, 4 and 5 would face Ridge.
Correct.
And then 6 and 7 would be one house?
No, they would just stay 6 and 7.
Right.
Or then they would be,
Well, so
4
4 and 5 would be one house or 2 houses?
That would be 1.
And 6 and 7 would be 1 or 2 houses?
That'd be 2. And then you combine 1 and 2 and orient it towards Ridge Road.
So you're losing 2 lots. So you'd have 2 lots on the front, on the north, 2 lots on the south.
So you'd have 1, 2, 3, yep.
Yes.
So it would go from 7 lots to 5 lots, but, so 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 would be combined. And 1 and 2 would become 1 lot, 4 and 5 would become 1 lot, 3, 6, and 7 would remain. Is that what you're,
Yep, that's one possibility,
Okay.
right.
that's what we recommended, so,
So, but now, we can make that recommendation in the,
yes.
yes,
That would be a condition you're adding to the approval.
okay.
All set? Commissioner Zuber?
yeah, can I disagree with that? Can you did you say that you could put these pictures up, the elevations that they gave us in the pack, that they gave us? So, I think these are pretty ugly.
Yeah.
Especially that one. And I also, I guess I don't have a problem with them facing the side street. I can't remember the name of the street, and my battery died on my device, so I can't look at that. But I feel that if there's a landscape buffer on Ridge Road, then that helps give this a different feel than the houses that face Ridge Road. And trying to force them to have a front on Ridge Road, these just look totally out of character for what's the rest of the houses in the neighborhood would look like.
Well, if they took the initial house and just turned it face and then instead of a front
Yeah.
entry garage, you'd have a side entry, and you wouldn't have as fancy of a side
Right.
facing the internal road. You just turn the house. What he's done
Right.
here, I think he's tried to enhance so it has 2 fronts. Is that correct, John? You don't show
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So it basically, when this was originally proposed with the elevations, and we can pull that up as well, but it were just, Mr. Goulet wanted us to dress it up a little bit so it looked a little nicer. I think we have a disagreement on this, which is okay in terms of they do want those 2 of the lots facing Ridge, which, I'm against it, of course. I just think that having two houses face Ridge doesn't make sense. I know that there are other homes abutting that do, but I think your typical type of development, the homes face perpendicular to the road. This was our way of sort of dressing up the sides of the house. I could certainly go either way with it, but it would only impact those first 2 lots just to give it sort of a presence of having somewhat of a front elevation on Ridge while keeping the current density.
Yeah, what I was going to say next is that I think that turning 2 houses towards Ridge, it makes those 2 houses feel like they're not part of this subdivision. They feel more like they're fronting on Ridge Road, and then they fit along with.
And the residents want them to feel like they're along Ridge Road, though, so that's the issue that you've got to deal with. It's
Yeah,
like,
what about
okay.
feeling
that's
like
the
you're
whole
part of the
argument. It's like,
area?
Okay,
mean,
I'll finish
you know,
my
that's-
sentence when I get home.
That's the whole argument here is, what do we do along Ridge Road? How's it going to be consistent along Ridge Road? Do we face them towards Ridge Road so they totally face Ridge Road, or do we try to do what John does, mean, one of our issues is that these houses are basically, their backyards are facing the front yards of the houses to either side of them. So the functional backyard of these houses is not opposite of Ridge Road, it's in the front yard of the neighbor to the south and the neighbor to the north because of the setbacks on those two houses. So that's not generally, desirable either. I mean, he's got some landscaping there on the south, which helps kind of buffer the front yard from the house to the south, but you guys need to make a decision, is that enough? So, I mean, that's ultimately the decision you guys have got to make is one, do you want the lots facing Ridge Road, or do you want them facing the internal road? And then if so, what to do along Ridge Road, so.
Obviously, you guys don't want to hear my
No, go
opinion,
ahead,
so
I was just trying
I'll
to,
take off.
John obviously doesn't want to lose any lots.
Huh?
John obviously doesn't want to lose any lots. So you don't like the architecture, you said, of what he's done here to face Ridge Road. So what do you want to see along Ridge Road, Don?
I would like to see a landscape buffer like we see on other subdivisions.
Okay, but this is not a typical subdivision, and we don't want a berm along Ridge Road because there aren't any berms along that section of Ridge Road anywhere. I mean, we've got a landscape buffer there, but it's like, it's basically taking that landscaping and putting it grading, treating it more like a front yard so that we don't have something that looks, I mean, we don't have any landscape berms in Cherry Hill Village, or we don't have any landscape berms along Ridge Road. So we're trying to keep it more natural and trying to do something that was, that blended in with the front yards of the other houses.
I was just asked for my opinion as a commissioner, and I gave it, and I kept getting interrupted, Jeff. You interrupted me like 3 times.
Okay, so let me try to clarify, because we've got different.
Please clarify what I'm trying to say.
In terms of a landscape buffer, does that mean a berm or just landscaping?
Just landscaping.
Okay, well, that's what we've got there.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with what's presented. I
Okay.
think that trying to turn a house sideways like this would just be hideous.
Okay, so you like it the way it's designed?
I do.
Okay.
I
all right.
do. Do I think that we should maybe look at reducing the number of homes overall? That's a different issue.
Okay. So, Patrick, can you bring up the landscape plan
What
so
do you
everybody
feel
can
about
see
that?
the landscape plan?
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other
So,
with
Okay.
the number of homes that are there. I mean,
Okay.
Honestly,
so we have the original
so
kind
upset
of.
I can't even think straight right
We
now.
can go back to John's original side elevation that was in the packet before this one. So Don, you reviewed that one that was in your packet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't look at my computer right now.
Okay,
so-
we're going to bring it up.
Thank
So-
you.
So we can compare it to this, so we
But
can get it, so
just-
we can get.
Jeff, if you want to just tell me what I think, that's fine.
No, I just need to understand, so everybody, I wasn't sure where you're coming, I'm sorry, Don, I wasn't sure where you're going with it.
Well, you could have let me finish and then
Well,
I
I
would have known.
apologize, I'm sorry, so.
But we definitely want you to finish.
Honestly,
Okay.
I respect your opinion on
Thank
this
you.
because we're talking about the architecture not only of the houses, but of the entire area.
Yeah.
So I want to hear what you have to say about the orientation, at least along Ridge Road and the houses themselves.
I appreciate that.
So Patrick just brought up the original proposal for the sides for lots 1 and 4. So essentially, the left elevation would be what would be visible on those two lots facing Ridge Road. So that's what he originally designed for those two houses. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So basically, he just tried to add more windows to the side and wrap the porch around on those two lots. So he went from that to this to try to make it more compatible with, trying to treat it more like a front, showing a front entrance towards Ridge Road. So Don, you're saying that you prefer this over this?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said that I thought that what's on the paper is hideous,
Okay.
and I think that something in between the two would be appropriate. I think this is pretty plain. This is typical subdivision side elevation. Something in between that doesn't make it look like a front, but that makes it look nicer than a typical side would be fine, would be very nice.
Okay, do you have any particular recommendations on what you would do to this particular elevation without him changing the entire design of the house? Not that you like the design of the house anyway, but
Do you like the other designs that have the shutters and the
Yeah, I mean-
other detail?
Let me look
Because
back
that
at
was my
this.
impression, was the plain ones just don't go, but give me some roof detail and give me the shutters, give me some detail.
Yeah, I mean, something in between, like I said,
Yeah,
I think
like
putting a
those.
ponderosa porch is not necessarily the answer. Maybe a couple of windows, maybe some shutters, maybe some window boxes. I could design these for you, but not right this second.
so, okay.
Uh,
So it needs more work.
Pardon me?
It just needs more work.
For
I
those
can't
of you in
understand
the
you.
audience that do
I'm
not
sorry.
know, this
You
is
just
our
feel that
resident
the site elevation
architect.
would need more work than what it's shown. It doesn't have enough detail on it.
Right.
Okay.
Which we wouldn't have to actually get into until a next phase, if there's a next phase, right?
Well, the next phase is site plan. You don't
Right,
normally look at
exactly.
house designs at site
But
plan.
we can give direction.
Right, but you don't necessarily see the final house designs at site plan. This is part of the PDD package. It's a minor PDD. So that's why I want to make sure I get all of the issues down tonight. So I apologize if I interrupted, because I think we've got some varying opinions here on the house orientation. We've got some issues with the house design, and we've got some issues with the house size. So I want to make sure that we clarify what all of those are before we get to the end of the discussion, so everybody's
Commissioner-
on the same page. So.
Commissioner Zuber, are you opposed to the orientation of the two houses changing but 90 degrees?
Yes, because I think they're part of this neighborhood, and I think that turning them, and then especially only having like one house behind one of them, that wouldn't feel like my neighbors, so much if I lived there. I think that they should be facing the same way. That's my opinion.
Okay, all right, even though driving down Ridge, you would see them all, okay,
I would suggest landscaping on that side, so,
right, which you're going to have anyway.
right.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Engel,
I'm
What do you think?
I'm good with the orientation the way they are.
okay, what about the density?
It's 2.4 per acre, so it's within our rules, so I'm okay with it.
And the path?
The past?
The pathway that's there because of the utilities but the...
Well, we have to maintain the path. It's a
Well-
utility path. I mean, I don't think they're going to see a huge amount of pedestrian traffic.
Well, we don't have to improve the path. If you don't want to, right now, it's shown as an improved path. We
Just
don't
leave
have
it-
to do anything with it.
Just leave it the way it is.
You can just let it grow over.
Yeah.
I understand, okay.
It's just there for access to the utilities, right, Jeff?
Right.
Yeah.
We were trying to make it more useful so
Yeah.
it can be a walking path for the neighborhood, but if nobody wants that,
Yeah,
that's,
I think just leave the path as it is and
all right.
let's move.
Okay. Commissioner Perkins?
You don't have a microphone either.
Commissioner Eggenberger?
Well, I think that it's taken me a long time on my phone to figure out just where the heck this is. I was thinking we were way south, but we're really just way right up here, right?
Right.
And that's the problem, right? We're not used to having Cherry Hill right up there. We're thinking it's all right down
Right.
here, and so it's just kind of been plopped in somewhere, which I understand why it's causing so many problems for everyone, because it's not in this area that it feels like it should be. But the problem is it fits with the rules, right? It's following the rules, and that's our job, to make sure that everything's following the rules. I do appreciate the developer saying he's going to work with the neighbors. I know we've had luck with other developers doing that and helping to work together to come up with something that everyone can be happy with. And I hope you're going to be able to have some conversations and work with ways that you can keep everybody happy in this area. It feels a bit like a square peg in a round hole trying to fit this in where we're not in Cherry Hill Village. It's just plopped somewhere else. But I have no concerns with the plan because it follows the rules.
Is it? Okay. My opinion on this is, I was concerned with the density. Well, actually, let me backtrack. I was more concerned with the modifications until I got the explanation of those modifications. I'm not as concerned quite of the density because who really knows that other than us here today because we're discussing it? As you drive through as a person, you're not going to go, oh, wow, look at these houses, it must be more dense than those houses. But appearances are everything. I, for one, wouldn't mind seeing the two houses oriented 90 degrees like the other houses along Ridge. I think that respects the development that has already been there, even though we've been redeveloping the land and putting new houses. We've got to respect, or we should respect, the fact that there's houses that have been there from way back. I mean, we are right there by the historical village. There's history that we've tried to maintain. I think that's a bit of history, just the orientation as you drive down Ridge Road. The architecture of the housing, the facades, I don't like the plain facades at all. I like detail. So to me, you can throw those out. The ones with the nice roof lines and the shutters and some actual 3D orientation in there, that's all well and good. I think basically the design is compatible with more of a farmhouse type of thing melding in with newness. I think you should think about decreasing the density, though. I really do. I think that even though it is compatible with the overlay, we're talking about an openness that's already there that we're kind of melding newness into. And, you know, is there that big a difference between, let's say, 33 homes as opposed to 39 or 38? With a slightly different orientation. Those look like they're pretty close together. Those look like they should be right into the village itself. Now, that's not the actual village, and so I'm not looking to see that kind of architecture, that neo-traditional houses close together type of thing. So, you know, that's just my opinion, and it's going to be up to the board.
Going back to your question is if you're driving around, could you tell whether there's 33 homes or 38 homes in a subdivision?
No, I couldn't.
But when you compare it to the neighborhood right next to it, I mean, look to the west. Look at those two houses that was on the overall, the aerial with the landscape, I think. I mean, four of the proposed houses take up two of the other houses.
That's in a different zoning district, though.
I get it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
adjacent. It's right next door.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what do you want the density to be in this area?
What I want is a compatibility as far as the
Well, we can't
appearance.
vote on compatibility.
And so,
Do you want two
pardon?
houses, one house? I mean, what do you want the density to be?
Well, the density is what we've dictated it to be, which is in a PDD, it can be, you know, pretty much what we've got, right? It can be R3 in compatibility.
Right.
All right, so that's
So
what
if we're
this
going to,
is.
if we're going to propose a
but-
motion, what should we propose? When you just say you propose compatibility, how do we put that in a motion?
I'm not talking about putting that part of it in
I mean,
that motion. I'm saying
I
that
have-
it's part of the motion.
Okay,
we would
there's a couple
be
different ways you
oriented.
can look at it. If it's an issue, okay, he's got 60-foot lots, okay. You could say, okay, the minimum lot width is going to be 70 feet, and you're going to have 15 feet between houses instead of 10 feet behind houses. I mean, in Cherry Hill Village had a range of lot sizes and lot widths. Okay, so you take River's Edge in Cherry Hill Village. I'll give you an example. That's on the edge of the village. That's over on Napier Road. Those are 70-foot lots. Those were considered estate lots. Okay. Now, those are big houses. I mean, 70-foot lot is still not a big lot. It's going to be wider than this. Yes, is he going to lose lots? Yeah, he's going to lose lots. But it might open it up a little bit more, not make everything seem quite so tight. If you've got a little bit wider lot and you increase the setback slightly, you know, maybe you go to a total of 5 and 7 instead of 5 and 5 for setbacks. You have 12 feet between houses instead of 10 feet between houses, similar to a village or an estate lot would have been in the original village. I mean, that's just for comparison.
Right.
But in order to say how do you reduce the density, the only way to reduce the density is reduce the number of lots.
So you're saying...
And so how do you do that? So what is the minimum standard that you feel is acceptable to be compatible with this area?
So you're saying that we can approve this, but we can approve it with a different lot size, and then they've got to go back to the drawing board.
You can make a recommendation to the board.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the way we want to go or not.
I had a couple comments. Is it
Go ahead.
appropriate for me to just share some thoughts?
Sure,
now?
go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I appreciate everybody's comments. I appreciate the public comments. When I bought the property back in 2011, I did in fact do a great deal of due diligence, as I always do. I spoke with Mr. Goulet, I spoke with the engineering department, I spoke with a number of folks at Canton Township, looked at past records, and what I found is that this property has an allowable density of 4 units per acre. I understand and I sympathize with all of the comments of the folks here. I do. I understand they've been living on their properties, and then all of a sudden a big subdivision comes in and they get nervous, although this is not a very large development considering all the other developments that are in Canton. I looked at Pulte across the street. They were 50 by 110. I look at some of the other developments that are 60-footers. I know that Westridge Estates is a larger lots. It's a different zoning. The bottom line is that, I looked at this and said, okay, the underlying, allowable density is 4 units per acre, and we're at 2.5 or 2.4. So I actually I guess I'm a little caught off guard just because I thought I was doing the right thing coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to propose 60-footers by 130, which is a lot more generous than what some of the other developments are. I mean, like I said, the landings right across the street are 50-footers by 110. There's no yards whatsoever. So I thought by coming in with something a little bit larger made a lot of sense. Concord Park, which just started, also 50-footers by 110s. So I thought this was a very fair, reasonable density. I didn't think that I was being, obnoxious at all. I thought I was coming in, about 38% below what the allowable density is. I mean, if I'd come in with 50-footers, which briefly was discussed, and Jeff, probably, talked me out of it, but I certainly don't think that this is unreasonable. I think if I'd come in with 50-footers, we'd be having probably the same conversation about how I'm going to make them a little bit larger and maybe make them 60-footers. So I just tried to find a middle ground between the landings, some of the other developments, as well as Westridge Estates. And I think this falls within that range while still, coming in significantly below the allowable density of 4 units per acre. And I apologize for keep mentioning that, but I think it's important because I'm not asking to get anything rezoned, and I think some of the folks here are looking at the past and things that expired, and lots of things have changed, and, folks that presented things, they're not around anymore, it's expired. We're here with basically a piece of property that allows up to 4 units per acre. And in terms of the open space, I was very, I bought the property to the south specifically so I could have more open space. And sure, maybe looking at the plan, it doesn't seem like it, but planned development allows for 25% open space, and I believe I'm at 34.5% open space on this. So I think as a developer, I've done a lot here to try to conform and come in from a reasonable angle. I know that I can't make everybody happy, but I think at the end of the day, you do have to take serious consideration with, the fact that I've come in significantly less already in the density area.
Well, we certainly appreciate your honest effort in that, understanding that we all are really in a common bond on this. We're coming at it from different directions, but
Sure.
we all want a good product for Canton.
Yep.
It's that simple. It's just that getting there is sometimes a challenge when you're mixing old and new.
Sure.
And, I think that's what we're up against here. Any other thoughts from the commission on this? Are we in any kind of unification on any changes to this proposal? What's the consensus? What, are you for orienting the two houses different? Are you for bigger lots?
I think somebody's just going to have to make a motion. You're going to have to just,
Greg,
somebody
I'll-
needs to make a motion and then
I'll make a
discuss it.
motion.
I think it's really important, oh, I'm sorry, if I,
I'll make a motion. If somebody wants to put an addendum to it, then let them say it. I move to recommend approval of the Meadows of Cherry Hill Minor Plan Development District, formerly named the Meadows of Canton, on tax parcel 07299-005-704 and 07299-009-002, as provided in the Plan Development Agreement and Plan documents.
And we can add amendments to it?
If you would like and you can
Well,
support, sure.
is there a second to the motion?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Engel and a support by Commissioner Zuber. Go ahead, Commissioner Graham Hudak.
Oh, I would just like to amend that we open the lots up to 75 feet wide. Based on, I think, next to it was 90. I know across the street is 50, but that's kind of a big distance away, so.
Okay, under Robert's rules, one of the motion makers would have to accept the amendment.
Okay.
I made the motion and she seconded it. Do we vote on that before we vote on the amendment?
The motion
No.
is still under discussion, I think.
Still under discussion.
Okay. No, I do not, I'm not in favor of 70-foot lots,
Okay, any
or 75-foot lots, excuse me.
75-foot lots, okay.
And if the amendment gets voted down and
his
somebody wants to
motion?
propose, go ahead.
Okay, well, we have to call the vote.
Call the vote.
All right, we have a motion and in support. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Certainly, Commissioner Opar,
No.
Commissioner Ataria,
No.
Commissioner Graham Hudak,
No?
Commissioner Edelberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
No.
Okay, a 4-4 vote is not is a tie, which is basically does not pass.
Now pass, okay.
So
Okay, so,
basically, somebody needs to make an alternate motion. 4-4 does not pass. You need an affirmative vote. It would be 5 votes.
gotcha. Okay.
So-
So would anyone like to make another motion?
You had another motion here, right, Jeff, on this already, on the RBA, correct? Where was it?
Basically, that was the standard motion.
But didn't you have an alternative?
Well, we had some recommendations about orientation and combination of the first 2 lots and/or modification of the architecture facing Ridge Road, however you wanted to slice and dice that.
And the model motion, it ended with subject to and then a colon, so that was open-ended if there were any additions to the motion or any conditions
Yeah.
that modified the lot layout or any of the architecture.
can I present something? Is that real quick?
They need to work
That
through
shows
this.
an alternative? No.
They need to work through it unless you're going to throw an option at them for their consideration, John, and that's up to them if they want to reopen it to you to consider.
That's what I want to do. I'd like to put an alternative out there for consideration.
You want to,
I have an alternative drawing that I'd like to,
John wants to present an alternative to his proposal for your consideration. That's up to you whether or not you want to open that consideration up at this point.
how does the board feel about that?
I'm okay with it.
You open?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. The public hearing's been open and closed, so.
Sorry?
Why don't we, if she wants to make a motion, let her make a motion before we,
Okay, would this affect your motion?
I don't know what he has.
Yeah, so, I mean,
well,
I don't know what her motion was.
because she hasn't made it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
I
now
would
we're
prefer I
accepting
would
this
prefer we
information.
make-
Okay,
I would prefer we
Greg,
hear her
okay,
motion
Greg,
before we
point of
vote.
order. Okay, if you want to receive additional discussion from the developer, you need to make a motion to accept additional information from the developer as part of your discussion.
I want to do that.
So
Okay.
right now, you've made a motion, you guys have voted on a motion, and that motion failed. So now you're back to planning commission discussion or an alternate motion, as a Robert's rules.
Do we have a motion to accept the new development, the developer's information?
Support, so moved.
I have to have a motion. Is that, you
I
do
make
the
a
motion?
motion to see what the
I
developer has.
support it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Graham Hudak and support by Commissioner Acharya to accept the developer's new information. Yes, sir.
Did you vote on the motion? You need to vote on
You
the
gotta vote on the
motion.
motion.
No, this is true.
Okay,
Would you
please call the motion.
Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that motion, please?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay,
Motion
that's
passes.
7-1 to basically allow additional discussion with the developer.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So basically, what I just passed around was an alternative that I think satisfies Mr. Goulet, Mr. Sloan, and some of the folks that are having concerns about the entry into the development. I combined lots, sorry, I can't see that well, but the first two lots were combined, creating very large lots with 2 homes on each side of the street that face Ridge Road, which is what Mr. Goulet and Mr. Sloan are advocating for, and some of the other folks on the commission here. And hopefully, while I don't particularly love this scenario, I do want to try to make everybody happy, some of the neighbors and whatnot, and as well as the planning commission. So I guess that I would be willing to, do that. And I think it would probably be a nice look.
So the way I read this, you've eliminated 2 lots,
That's correct.
but you've increased the size of 1 and 3.
That's correct, because those were originally 2 lots on each side of the street. So now you've got 2 very large lots at the entry that somewhat align with the neighbors on either side. The homes, the setbacks for lots 1 and 3 are aligned directly with both the neighbor to the north and the south. And I think that probably has more alignment with what Mr. Goulet and Mr. Sloan want, as well as some of the other folks on this commission.
Is that accurate, Jeff? Is that what you wanted?
Well, this is what we were talking about earlier in terms of combining the first 2 lots on each side of the road.
Okay. I mean, he said that's what you and Patrick, that you
Well, that was
wanted
one of the
this.
alternatives that we had in our
Okay.
recommendation. The other option
Well,
was
this
an
is-
and/or, yeah.
This is the same thing that they proposed.
Right.
And proposed. Right?
That's correct.
It's just a picture of what was discussed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The orientation is still inward towards the road.
No.
Right?
No,
It's not towards Ridge.
no, 1 and 3,
1
those
and
2
3
homes
face
will
Ridge.
face Ridge Road.
So the backyard of 3 goes into the front yard of 4.
That's the side yard.
yeah.
Side yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't read it that way.
So I think that would
Side entry drive,
It would-
side entry garage, right?
It would create a very large lot,
On 1 and 3.
a lot of landscaping, and align more with what's on either side of it.
Commissioner Zuber?
I did not prefer this option to begin with, so, no. I mean, what?
Turn your mic.
Sorry. I still prefer what was originally drawn, where the houses face the same direction.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I
think
do.
it's going to feel more like a neighborhood, which
Well,
it is.
okay. So if we have 2 larger lots and the houses face internally, would that make any difference?
What did we achieve?
Nothing.
Well, 2 larger lots that are consistent with the lot
Well,
sizes to either
Okay, all right,
side.
just the
so-
size of the lots.
So that's why we had an and/or in our recommendation, because it depended on whether or not you felt lot size was important or house orientation was important, or both.
Okay.
So, I mean, so there's,
Commissioner Graham Hudak, are you
I'd
still
like
going
to
to make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's oriented, I like the larger lot size, so I make a motion to, okay, let me see, I think did you write this up already, Mr. Sloan? In terms of a change you had looked at? Or no, it's not written up, right?
No, the way that it was written up was just the subject to and then the colon. But if you want to refer to the bottom of page 2 of 4 of our write-up, our analysis, it's under the architectural layout where we enumerate 1 and 2, with 2 being that the areas of units 1 and 4 be sized as land divisions, meaning the R2 district guidelines, And that text spills onto page 3.
Or just refer to this plan.
Okay,
Right.
So basically, it's the same motion, but with this as an amendment.
okay.
Is this plan, so 1 and 3, the front of the house faces Ridge Road, correct? This plan you just passed?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, which I'm not going to vote for it, but we'll wait to the motion.
so I move to recommend approval of the Meadow of Cherry Hill Minor Plan Development District, formerly named the Meadow of Canton, on tax parcel 072990005-704 and 07299000902, as provided in the plan development agreement and plan document, subject to this minor change. Is that correct? Would that include this, then, how I said it?
We would recommend referring to the plans distributed by the project sponsor to the Planning Commission.
Okay, referring to the plan submitted, a change that just happened about 10 minutes ago, to the Planning Commission by the developer.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Graham Hudak and support by Commissioner Acharya. Any further discussion? Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Okon?
No.
Commissioner Acharya?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
No.
Commissioner Zuber, no. Commissioner Engel?
No.
And Chairman Green?
Yes.
That motion fails 4-4. So,
Was that a tie?
All right.
Was that 4 and 4?
Yep.
okay.
I'm
So-
sorry, but the public hearing is closed. No. No. Well, let me put it to the commission. Did you want to,
I have no problem opening the public hearing. Move to open the public hearing.
Support.
we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Graham Hudak to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sir, coming up over to this mic over here. Careful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for reopening the hearing for this point. And that is that I think there is a mistaken impression being conveyed, both in part by staff as well as by the developer, that 4 units to the acre is a matter of right for this property. Your 2017 master land use plan, including the Cherry Hill Village overlay, it states on page 75, a maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre can be considered for the village edge. That isn't a matter of zoning by right or a density by right. So the question I believe that is important for the Planning Commission to consider is why? Why was the previous developer able to see appropriate return on his or her investment and saw a density of 28 lots as being consistent with the village edge, as being consistent with the overlay, and being consistent with your own plan, your own master plan for this area, whereas this developer feels a need to squeeze 39 lots into in the same exact area. So 4 units to the acre is not the zoning of right or the overlay.
That's why I did
density
2.4.
by right.
That's
Okay.
why I came in at 2.4, not 4. So I'm way below the
The previous
allowable
density
amount.
was 1.7.
But he does not have to,
acreage-
excuse me, time out. I don't have my gavel here, but he
Sorry.
does not have to match the previous developer if he stays within the dictates of the overlay, which apparently he has. It's just a matter of whether we accept what he's given.
You're most accurate, Mr. Chairman. It's whether you accept, if the Planning Commission accepts it, as being a compatible density with the underlying R1 zoning and the existing neighborhood that is there.
Right.
Yes, but it's not a matter of right.
No.
May
Thank
I
you. You're-
say one other thing, please?
Sure.
Okay. So obviously, we have a deadlock here, and we probably all want to go home and watch TV. So I have another scenario that I'm happy to propose that maybe Commissioner Zuber and Commissioner Engel would support, which is what if we took under the plan that I just presented, which shows lots 1 and 3 facing Ridge, what if we faced lots 1 and 3 still towards Hedgewood, so they felt part of the development, but we pushed them back far enough that there was enough open space there on Ridge Road that kind of satisfied, both, I think, some of your concerns of not liking Ridge Road, which I personally don't either. I don't like the homes facing Ridge, but push these homes back further enough so it wasn't right up against Ridge. So I'd still be at the same density. I'd lose 2 lots, but these homes would be pushed further back and still have a feel of a subdivision. It might look nice to have an entry coming in with, that 85-foot or 90 feet of grassy space, that's actually a larger amount of space than you typically see in most other developments.
Commissioner Zuber, he directed it at you and Commissioner Engel.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. I would
Commissioner
like
Engel?
that.
So you're saying push the building footprints further to the west so they're not right up on the road?
They're not on the
Okay.
road, so they'd still be facing Hedgewood.
Okay.
I'm okay. I voted for the first recommendation, to have all 4 there.
So you're okay.
So it was Mr. Green who wanted something different than that. You wanted bigger lots, but you didn't say which size bigger you wanted. You just
Right.
didn't want this, but we don't know what you want. So
I know.
maybe you could tell us.
And so the answer to that has already been made, and he's come up with bigger lots for those 2. I'm okay with that. I can go along with the orientation being
Okay.
towards Hedgewood.
Okay, Greg, you've got a public hearing still open. You might want to find out whether there's any more comments and
Okay.
close the public hearing before we go back to discussion.
There's a gentleman up there.
Okay.
Gentleman's already there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to make an added comment of clarification, because when we were discussing the path that's going, the walking path, it was referred to as a gravel path. Leave it the way it is. I want to make very clear to the commission, right now, that path is closed off by a metal gate, a chain, and a lock, and there's big signs at both ends of that path that says, private property, do not trespass. This is not a public pathway currently. Thank you.
Okay.
Move to close the public hearing.
Got a motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It wasn't included in the motion about the path, but I think we all assume that the path isn't really a path, correct? I mean, we're not advertising it as a path. It really needs to just disappear from the discussion. It's not a path.
Remove the path from the plan.
Pardon?
And also, in addition to removing
It's not a feature of this project, right?
In addition to removing the path from the plan, it was originally envisioned as a definite benefit of the project by having a path, another way in for pedestrians. So if the path is removed, we would also remove that as a definite benefit. In addition to removing it from the plan, remove it as a proposed definite benefit of the agreement.
And remove the extension coming from the sidewalk? Because you show an
The
extension
whole
going to that
east-west part of
path.
it would be, yeah.
Yeah, although there would still be the
Move
north.
it over a little bit.
Yeah, you wouldn't put a sidewalk in front of it either.
No, the other, from the sidewalk within the subdivision.
Oh, okay.
See the leg coming down from the sidewalk to that? That indicates that, hey, you can walk down here. And that's what they don't want.
Right, so you need access to the pond, so that would be the extent of the path would be to the pond.
Well, you're going to have to, well,
Yeah,
I think you're
So
going to
the
have...
sidewalk would end at the pond.
right.
It's a utility right-of-way.
I'm perfectly happy to eliminate that. I mean, you know, you're talking about access to the pond
Right.
once a year to maintain it. It's
Right,
not a
right.
big deal if that's all.
Yeah, I thought the path issue was...
I recognize the homeowner's concerns with privacy.
Right.
And if that doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right. Okay, so now we need... Yes, Commissioner Oka.
Just my comment again is, you know, my biggest issue with this is the width of the lots. Again, I get it that it meets the overlay, but it's not consistent with the neighboring properties. To the west, if you go to the west, Patrick, go to the west.
You can only,
Look at those two houses up there on the left there. They take up 4 houses. It's just not consistent with the south, with the north, or with the west. I have no problem with the density. Density is one thing, okay? I know it meets the density. I don't have a problem with the density. I have a problem with the width of the lots. You know, Anne Marie mentioned earlier, 75-foot minimum lots. I would be okay with that. I'd like to see this development with 75 with lots. Whatever the density is, the density is.
Well, but the width of the lots is going to affect the density.
Exactly.
So,
I think it's more important, the width of the lots.
so are you prepared to make a motion to dictate the width of the lot?
I would love to.
Didn't we do that?
Don't we have a motion?
I'm sorry?
no, we don't have anything.
We don't have a motion? Okay, make a motion.
Yeah, right now, you just closed the public hearing, again, there's no motion on the table.
That's true, that's true. We still have a public,
No, we
oh, wait,
closed
we
it.
closed
No,
it,
we
right?
closed it.
How,
Okay.
could I say something again? Is that?
Sure.
I just,
Do you really want to work with Canton?
What did you want to add?
well, this is not an unusual scenario, right? I mean, we have situations many times where projects are developed, and on either side of that project is possibly an older home on a larger parcel.
Yeah, we're aware of that. We deal with that all the time.
Things are grandfathered in, so I don't think there's anything unusual here. Again, it's 2.4 units per year.
Okay, all right, enough said.
All right,
Enough said.
sorry.
Okay, so for the commission, so you're going to make a motion?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
All right, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the Meadows of Cherry Hill minor planned PUD, formerly named the Meadows of Canton on tax parcel 072-990005-704 and 072-990009-002, as provided in the plan development agreement and plan documents subject to, and those 5 that are listed, also with a minimum lot width of 75 feet.
Elimination of the
Now,
path.
do we,
Oh, and the path stays as is.
And what about this?
You know, I can go either way with the two houses in the front.
are you
Be
saying
specific.
Are you including the
Yes,
the
I will
latest-
include this recent handout combining the two.
With what orientation?
Just setting them back, Alan.
The latest proposal is
The latest
orienting the houses
proposal.
inward toward the street with
Okay.
more open
There you
space
go.
towards
Okay.
Ridge Road.
That's your motion?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Okan and support by Commissioner Graham Hudak. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Commissioner Zuber, could you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Okan?
Yes.
Commissioner Acharya?
No.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
Yes?
Commissioner Eggenberger?
No.
Commissioner Perkins?
No,
Commissioner Engel?
No.
Commissioner Zuber, no. And Chairman Green?
Yes.
Motion fails?
What?
Motion fails.
Motion was,
carries.
No, there was.
No, we said
No, I
tie.
didn't hear what he said. I thought he said
It's a
carries.
tie again.
I
We have
thought-
Acharya, Eggenberger, Perkins, and Engel was no.
Oh,
Should we recount the votes? Or
No.
Acharya was no, Eggenberger was no, Perkins was no,
Zuber was no.
Engel was no.
I was no, and Dawn was no.
So it's
Five
3 to,
no's.
so
That
the
was
motion
yes.
fails 5-3.
Oh, it failed.
I thought he said it passed
No.
Okay,
originally.
all right. So,
Somebody needs to make an alternate motion, or you can table it.
yeah, I was
think
going
we
to
table
say,
it.
I was going to say that that's always an option, is for, if we cannot come to a conclusion on this, we can table it. I mean, it's not a pretty sight, but it's not dead if you table it.
What's going to change?
New proposals?
Maybe one of us.
No
What
one
would
would
change is he would go back and he
You
would
wanna
look at
deny
the
it?
plan to
Do you wanna
determine what he
issue-
wants to include
Well,
on the
there you go.
plan.
Greg,
Could
I would
I
like,
say
I know,
something?
you were okay with.
I would like you to
Yeah.
tell us what you want.
No, it's not, it's
Well, no,
what we
because
want
if-
as a panel.
May I have a
Well,
thought?
I voted yes on it.
Alan said
Okay.
he wanted 75 feet, so you're okay with
I
75?
was okay with 75.
Could I,
But you didn't say that on the first motion. What was it? You just wanted larger lots.
I wanted
So now we
larger
know you
lots.
wanted
He
75-foot
named it.
lots.
He spelled it out, so
Could,
I was okay with
Okay.
Okan's
So,
proposal.
so it appears that there's a wide variety of opinions on what's acceptable.
Yep.
I think John has heard all of your comments. And based on the comments and the concerns that you have relative to lot size and orientation, you know, a tabling motion will give him the opportunity to go back, redo the base plan so that everybody's looking at the same thing at the same time, and then you can make, then he can change his proposal, and you can vote on the proposal at hand on whether or not you feel that's appropriate. Right now, we're voting on motions on what everybody individually thinks is appropriate, and either you agree with it or you don't agree with it. It's not necessarily John's proposal.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So essentially,
Did-
you should be voting on the proposal from the applicant and whether or not it meets the criteria and whether it's appropriate or not. So right now, what's happening is we're making motions based on people's opinions, and then you either agree or not agree, and it's not necessarily getting any direction. So you can continue to make motions, or you can give John an opportunity to go back and evaluate the feedback. So-
Chairman Green, I suggest we table this and let John go back and come up with a new scenario for us to vote on.
Would you like to make a motion?
I thought that's what I was doing, but
Support,
I
he
motion
suggested.
we table
Support.
this.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to table this project by Commissioner Eggenberger and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There you have it, sir.
Okay, finally, a
heard all our
unanimous
concerns.
decision.
And,
So.
Yeah.
So would you like to repost this as another public hearing when it comes back, or do you want to continue, basically, essentially be brought back as old business because you've already held the public hearing? Do you want to rehold another public hearing and notice a public hearing or not?
Old business.
I think it deserves that.
Okay, then make a motion that we will hold a new public hearing, so.
Is that what the board feels? I think it deserves an actual public hearing. I don't.
I wouldn't vote for it.
Yeah.
We heard
You
all
want to
this
just
public.
bring it
What-
back as a?
We know
Just
their
old business.
concerns.
That's up to you.
Okay.
The public hearing's been held and closed.
I'm trying to get the feel of the board here.
No.
Okay, somebody make a motion.
I make a motion that we refer this as old business and not a new public hearing.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Eggenberger. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So be it.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh, I think we should take a little break,
There's more?
maybe 5 minutes.
We'll fly through the rest, right?
That was at the suggestion of one of our board members.
Okay.
I guess it was Julia.
I'm guessing I
I'm
know who
guessing.
it was.
So, we will notify everybody when it's back on the agenda. We won't advertise it as a public hearing, so.
That's fine.
So, everybody will know when it's back before he was old business.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, let us proceed. Our fourth project tonight is the Village Daycare, where we're considering a special land use for a group child care home on property which is located north of Salts and west of Morton Taylor, Brentwood Estates. Patrick, could you tell us more about that, please?
Yes, thank you. The proposal is to conduct a group child care home at a personal residence at 43463 Lipka Court. The applicant presently has a license for a family child care home, which allows for up to 6 children, which is a permitted use. The family childcare, that family classification is for up to 6 children, and that's a standard from state law. And the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act requires that for districts that allow for residential properties, that the residential structure can have a family daycare home by right. And so there's no special township approval to have a family daycare home of up to 6 kids. If they qualify based on the zoning district, they go straight to the state for their license. Once they go above 6 children, the next classification is called a group child care home, and that's for up to 12 children. So once you go to 7 to 12 children, now you're into the group child care home. It's a different license with the state, but also the State Zoning Act calls for the group child care homes to be special land uses in the districts that they're permitted in. So that's why we're here tonight for a public hearing and a special land use proposal, because the proposal's for a group child care home at that address, and by the state law, it would be up to 12 children. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act includes a number of criteria for group child care homes, and those are listed in our analysis report. The 2 items that we're most concerned about is first, the visible characteristics of the neighborhood, and second, the parking. With the first one, the visible characteristics of the neighborhood, the existing home would maintain consistency with the visible character of the neighborhood, but it goes beyond just the site itself for visible characteristics. We find that the application materials don't demonstrate that the proposed group child care home would maintain the visible characteristic of the neighborhood because of the allowable pickup and drop-off areas. Those areas are limited to a 1-car driveway and a cul-de-sac that doesn't allow parking in most parts. I'll bring up an aerial just to illustrate some of our concerns. So the location at 463 Lipka is shown on the plan here, and their driveway, it's a 1-car wide driveway, and then just west of their driveway, you don't see it in the aerial, but the arrow shows it here, that there's a no parking fire lane sign. So on the south side of Lipka, there's no parking on that side because there's a fire lane. And then within the cul-de-sac, there's no parking allowed. We asked the fire marshal about the parking standards there, and he confirmed that within the cul-de-sac, there's no on-street parking permitted. So that limits the parking between essentially the 2 driveways on the north side of Lipka Court, where you can get 2, maybe 3 cars, but it is a public road and it does allow for public parking, so anybody can park there for any reason as long as they're within the ordinances of the township for vehicles parked on a road. So therefore, with having potentially 12 pickups and 12 drop-offs in the morning and the afternoon, there could be room for maybe 1 or 2 in the driveway, but everybody else by nature will most likely park illegally, or they'll park on the north side of the road if parking is available. If not, the only way to park legally is to go farther west to the north-south road. The applicant has stated in some of the materials that many of the children at the home will be siblings of existing children and therefore fewer trips. That very well may be the case where there are fewer trips, but the state and township cannot regulate the familial status of children in a child care home. So the applicant may say it'll be siblings, or they could even propose a certain number of siblings, but there's nothing in the local ordinances or the state law that can restrict who can be a member of that group child care home. It's just a number, whether it's a sibling or not. So we have to consider that the 12 children could be unrelated, and there could be 12 a.m. trips and 12 p.m. trips during those peak hours. And then again, the second concern that we have is the parking. The plans that are submitted by the applicant indicate that employee parking is proposed on the north side of Lipka Court west of the driveway, and that the pickoff drop-off areas will be within the 1-car driveway. And again, we believe that the driveway would be insufficient because it's 1 car only. So if someone's dropping off and someone else is queued up, they're really going to queue up alongside the road, or they're going to perhaps park somewhere illegally. And then if the parking on the north side of Lipka Court is unavailable, it could be a situation where during the AM and peak AM and PM peak hours, there could be a slew of cars parked illegally, or they might leave the car running and say they're not parking, they're loading, or some other sort of thing. So we think that the cars could stack up, the cars could be displaced onto an adjacent street if they stayed as a legal operation in terms of parking, and that the driveway would be insufficient for the volume of cars during those peak hours. So because of those two major concerns in the existing condition on Lipka Court that can't be changed by anything that the applicant can do with respect to on-street parking, our recommendation is the special land use be denied for the group child care home at 43463 Lipka Court, as the application materials do not demonstrate sufficient parking and pickup drop-off areas for the proposed use. And also that this would not prevent an existing child care home of up to 6 children. That's permitted by state law, and it would do nothing to change the status to allow them to have up to 6 children. It's just allowing them to go from 7 to 12. So that will conclude our analysis, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so as such, we need to open the public hearing. Got a motion on the floor to open the public hearing by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The public hearing is open. Who do we have that would like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am. You want to come over here? Oh, well, you're project sponsor. Never mind. Never mind. Yep. I got it mixed up again. Yes, this way. Sorry about that.
That's okay. While I understand your concerns about the parking,
please give us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My name is Lori Saul. I am the owner of the Village Daycare. The main reason that I first did the special land use is strictly for those siblings. I currently have 7 families that all have either older siblings that I've taken care of before their second sibling, or now have a first child who will be having more children later on. The concern is that I need to have that space for those siblings in the summertime, and also now to advocate for them in the fall, because who knows what their school schedule will be. And those families are very concerned with the fact that they want them to be with me when they do go back in the fall, if they have days off from school, as well as this summer. Currently, I mean, I'm 56 years old. I'm not looking to increase my business at this point, so I'm using these families to finish up what I am at the end of my career, and also to help them and have all their children in one spot, opposed to having them go to my daycare, to another daycare, to drop their children off at different spaces. Currently, with the amount of children that I have, it's not going to increase the traffic at all. I'm just taking those siblings in to help those families out for the summer and for that fall. And currently, there isn't a problem with the dropping off and picking up. They don't all come at the same time. I have some that come at 7 o'clock, I have some that come at 8 o'clock, I have some that come at 9. So I don't have that problem with the parking, per se, that you're concerned with on the street.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone have any comments from the audience?
Move to close the public hearing.
Support.
Are you sure that was a motion? It was kind of quiet. I hear a motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Engel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just messing with you, Don. Okay, so we're just going to open this up for discussion. Any causes for concern with this parking situation? Commissioner Graham Hudak.
Yeah, since this is, as the applicant is saying, is there a way to just, have it only for the next 2 years, next year, I mean, is there a way you can put boundaries on it?
No.
There isn't? Okay.
Once the state license is issued, it's issued, and then we lose control over what happens at that house. So That's why the state has allowed local governments to treat the group daycare homes because they're bigger, and we have to look at the compatibility and the standards in the state act for group daycares to make sure that they meet the standards for group daycare. Because once, we can't condition it at all. It's
But the
either-
state still controls my license and
Right.
whether or not
Yeah.
I'm following that regulation.
But a special land use, can we say it expires in a year?
Right.
They would,
No.
the special land use rights would run with the property.
So
So
we-
they would,
Once they have it, we could place any condition on the special land use we want, but once the state issues the license, they issue the license. Once we sign off on the license, we sign off on the license. So if she stops her business, obviously her license will go away.
It just goes away, right.
Yeah, it just goes away. But she could, given her situation, you may feel comfortable that this is not going to be an issue. So, but given the configuration, that's why, Patrick wrote up the analysis the way he did because of how parking works on the street, and they're not double driveways, and when you have more than 6 kids, you have to have another caregiver, because you need, how many caregivers do you need for 12? Do you need another?
Just one more.
Well, just one more, so you have to have, then you have to have parking for a caregiver in addition to resident parking. So those are all the issues. If you don't feel that based on what she's doing is a problem, and you need to weigh the pros and cons of that.
Commissioner Engel, what
But
was
the
your...
issue is we can't place any
thinking?
conditions on it because state law would prevent us from placing
with that
any
idea?
practical
Oh,
conditions.
wait, can I ask a question?
She says,
Yeah.
Wait a minute, hold on a second.
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Patrick, you said it runs with the land, the special land use, right?
right.
So does this house forever have a daycare for 7 to 12 as opposed to 1 to 6? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, generally, if a special land use is granted, it goes with the land. So in general, when you have subsequent owners and they inherit, or they buy a property or they use a property and that already has a special land use, that special land use continues. With a daycare, the state may require a new license, but in terms of any kind of local control of the township having to reissue a special land use, I don't think we'll necessarily have to, especially if it's a continuous use of the property or something comes up where they show that the property has an approved special land use for that particular use, just like any other special land use.
So if she happens to sell it to somebody who wants to run a daycare for 7 to 12 people, it's there.
Well,
Or
one thing
you could change it, I'm sorry, or you could change it to, if I sell the house, whoever's buying the house
one thing that you
would
could...
have to redo that.
The only reasonable condition I think you could place on it would be limiting the special land use to the current owner operator of the
Right.
daycare. So as she said, if she sold the property, obviously that license at the state would go away. So
Okay.
we
It
can't
would
limit, we
anyway
can't limit
without
her
me.
license, but we
Hold on one
could,
second.
we can't limit her license, but once her license goes away and she sells the property, we could limit somebody else from getting a license at the same location if you placed a condition on it for this operator.
Okay, that was my first question.
Right.
Second
So that's a
question
reasonable
is,
condition.
you said, once we grant this, she's got the license and it's in the state's hands.
Right.
You're talking about her personal license to be a daycare operator
That's
for 7 to 12.
That's
Correct.
correct.
And what would be our concern with that if she decided to do this till she's 90 and then she has all these?
Well,
And I'm being,
I think our only concern was adequacy of parking and where the no parking fire lanes are and the adequacy of drop-off and pickup and whether or not it was going to be disruptive to other neighbors in the area and...
I understand, yeah, understood,
Yeah,
understood.
just a practical issue.
How many years have you been doing this?
In my home,
Yes.
just a few. I've actually been in the daycare field for about over 30 years.
Okay.
I was in the corporate end for all of that time, got tired of it, wanted to do something more personal, and chose to do it in my home.
Yeah.
And the reason why I didn't do it as the larger, the group home in the beginning is because I didn't want to have that size of a group. So all I'm trying to do is service the families that I have.
Commissioner Graham Hudak?
Yeah, and I hear that. I mean, having children myself and having to run from daycare to camp here, it's a pain. And I know when you're dropping off and picking up, you aren't there that long. But I know previously, didn't we also ask someone had brought in letters from their neighbors saying it was okay, if they're okay, that they're going to be dropping off and picking up extra times. Is that a possibility also? I mean, I don't know, have your neighbors commented to you on
I
it?
actually have 2 neighbors that are in my daycare,
Okay.
but I can get you the letters if you want them.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
we
mean-
didn't receive any objections.
Yeah. Pardon?
Patrick, we didn't receive any
No,
objections.
we haven't received any.
Oh,
any
okay, yeah, I
comments
mean,
from
I don't
neighbors.
see an issue with it, and I mean, because I know what's like, and you aren't there that long, and I don't see an issue with it.
So when you do have the morning pickup and drop off, or the evening, because I presume that's pretty much what it is.
Right.
I mean, do you have, truthfully, do you have cars stacked up on one another?
I do
mean,
not.
Are they parking in the fire lane?
No. No,
Ma-
the most I have is maybe 2 parents in the driveway at one time, and it's never been a problem.
Okay.
Probably because your neighbors are clients.
No, and look, I'm a little torn. I mean, I understand the concerns we have here and being a homeowner and dealing with the Canton Cup. Thank you, COVID. Is that on record?
Actually, now because
I
of
do,
COVID,
I
there
understand
actually has
having traffic in your neighborhood and it can be very annoying and cumbersome, and that's why I'm trying to understand what's happening here. Because I also, had young kids and it was not easy, so.
Yeah, so basically, I open at 7 o'clock. I have 1 child that comes at 7. I have 2 that come at 7:30, 7:45. I have 1 that comes at 8. And then I have the rest that come between 9 and 10. So there's not anyone there, like, there's not a large group of cars at any given time. And then my kids leave during the day anywhere between 4 and 6 p.m. So there's not, as far as the parking thing, it's never been an issue. I've never had people that are lined up in front of my home or wrapped around the cul-de-sac or anything like that. They've always been either, at the most, even 2 cars in the driveway, or one's leaving and one's coming back. Or leaving and going out. And like I said, I'm just trying to service the families that I currently have.
Okay. Any, we closed the public hearing, right?
We did.
We did, okay.
We did close it.
Huh.
Any questions for the
Do we-
project sponsor?
I mean, does anyone object to adding the special land use also until, when she sells property, like Jeff had said, that you can cut it off then?
Well, you'd approve the special land use subject to her owning the property. When she sells it, it's
Correct.
null and void.
Right.
We'd have to specify that.
Right.
That the
Yeah.
license
In
is
the
not
motion?
transferable, yeah.
What's that?
So it's not transferable to a new owner, so.
There you go.
So the motion then, if you do it that way, ties it to her as opposed to the property,
As long as she owns that property.
as long as she owns the property.
As long as she holds a license.
Do I hear a motion?
It wasn't written down, was it?
I move to recommend approval of the request for a special land use for a group child care home on tax parcel 05702-0207-000, as long as the applicant maintains ownership of the property
And maintains the license.
and maintains the license, yes.
The license.
Sorry, yes, and maintains.
Support.
Ooh, stereo. We've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Perkins, or Commissioner Eggenberger.
Engelberg, I know, yeah, apparently we are.
Commissioner Eggenberger. Any further discussion? I think everybody's kind of tired. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Alcon,
Yes.
Commissioner Acharya. Yes. Commissioner Graham Hudak.
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes. And Chairman Green.
Yes.
Congrats.
Motion passed.
Thank you
Yes.
very much, I appreciate it.
Yeah, this still needs to go to the Township Board for final approval, Lori.
Okay, and about how long does that take?
July 14th is the next available meeting.
Okay, I'll let them know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging in there tonight.
Yeah.
All right, we have 4 new business site plans, but the good news is they're already ongoing due to COVID and the fact that we probably knew they were going to go through anyway. They've already been doing this. So we're going to lump these next 4 items together. They are seasonal sales permits, both the Home Depots and Lowe's and TNT firework sales. We're going to lump all those together, and we're going to consider seasonal sales permits for them. Lasting, is there 30 days? Well, two of them have.
Yeah, the first three are two 30-day permits for the seasonal sales. TNT is a 30-day permit, which is actually less than 30 days. That one hasn't started yet. So the first three are retroactive. The next one is upcoming for 4th of July sales.
The first three have two consecutive
Two
30
30-day
days,
permits.
right?
Mhm. They all kind of start and stop at different times.
Gotcha, okay. Do I hear a motion to bundle and approve those seasonal sales permits?
So moved. Support.
We're good.
Who supported that?
I agree. Dawn did.
Oh, okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Perkins and support by Commissioner Zuber. Any further discussion? Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Okon?
Yes.
Commissioner Acharya? Yes. Commissioner Graham-Hudak?
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes. And Chairman Green.
Yeah, it's a yes. All right, so going forward, we have new business for staff. Reserve Apartments, Canton Township, DPD Building Addition, Cherry Hill Preserve Condominiums. Do I hear a motion to send those to staff for their review?
So moved.
Support.
Got a motion by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Zuber. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then we've got a public hearing for July 13th. The Erie Investments Rezoning, Berkshire Apartments Preliminary PDD, Canton Marketplace, and Redwood at Marketplace Preliminary PDD. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Do I hear a motion to set that public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we've got a public hearing for August 10th. The oh, okay. You can read it. I can't pronounce it. Do you know how to pronounce that?
Dead bouquet.
What is it?
The dead bouquet.
What he said. Okay,
Nice.
so do we have
Got a
a motion to set the public hearing for August 10th?
So moved.
Support.
Got a motion by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Zuber. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, any business to take care of, anything?
Just item 12 in terms of formally amending your calendar. Item 12 on your agenda.
I'm sorry?
Item 12 on your agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to change the meeting dates to July 13th, 2020 and August 10th, 2020.
Thank you.
Support.
All right, I have a motion to make changes to our calendar by Commissioner Engel and support by Commissioner Perkins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
All right, we got a motion to adjourn. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive.
These are lovely, thank you.
2 hours.
We are
past my
adjourned.
bedtime.